This is The Bad Listener with Danny Stroh.
It was funny too. I had all three albums already on vinyl. I didn't have to buy any, which I thought was pretty cool.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I wasn't sure the one you picked. I guess we'll start with the one you picked.
Oh, nice.
The
Nice.
Titus Andronicus, The
Yeah,
Monitor, was your
love it.
pick. Awesome album.
Absolutely.
So what is this, like one of your favorite albums? Is that why you picked it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I do love the album. I would say like top 10, but it's up there for me.
Okay.
I love a lot of it. I love the different like avenues they go with it. I love the concept of it in a way.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's based on like Civil War kind of era.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
put a lot of
yeah,
like Civil War speeches in it.
Yeah.
So I thought it was creative, and you could hear a lot of the influences, like big New Jersey band, Springsteen,
yeah,
big time,
yeah.
punk rock too.
That what's it? That it's the opening song, right? They do
Yeah.
that. The what is it called? Is that 4score and 7, or is that different?
No, that's a little. Jeez, I forget now. Let's look at it in the back. A More Perfect Union.
More Perfect
That makes
Union.
perfect
Right. I couldn't remember it either. But that is like one of their best songs I feel like they've ever written.
Great
And it's
intro.
cool because it's a song written like paying homage to New Jersey, which is like one of the coolest things, you can do for your state that, you really don't hear stuff like that. It's also funny too because that style of rock, I mean, there's a bunch of different styles of rock in there, but they do have kind of that heartland rock feel, which kind of originated with Bruce Springsteen,
way,
right?
yeah.
Who's from New Jersey.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like kind of funny that they have this style originating from a guy from New Jersey, and maybe he played a big part in the way that they write music. I would assume, but obviously this is a very unique album. There's not a lot of bands that sound like them, but this album specifically is obviously kind of a conceptual album and has a feel to it that you're really not going to see in a lot of other bands.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so was this the first album you heard by them?
Yeah, I think so.
Because it wasn't for me. For me, the first album was The Most Lamentable Tragedy.
Okay. Another good one.
Which I think was the album after this one,
Yeah.
right? So that album was the first album I heard by them, which I thought off the bat I liked a lot of the songs that came over. I thought was really good. And then, of course, I go back and listen to The Monitor, and I hear A More Perfect Union. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this band is, it's awesome. You hear a song like that, it was just one of the coolest songs I've ever heard in the modern sound of rock and roll music, at least. So yeah, and then you go back and you listen to all their other stuff, and unfortunately I'm not a fan of any of their newer stuff, and I hate to be that critic, and it's like, oh, this band's getting worse and worse, but it's just, if they can go back to like some, it's, to me it's not like I'm hating on them, it's, they are breaking my heart is what they're doing, because you fall in love with a band when you hear an album like The Monitor and then The Most Lamentable Tragedy, and you see the potential and how good they are at what they can do, and then it just starts, the music starts to get like it's kind of
ran out of ideas
off, and it's ran out of I don't know if it's ideas or so. Okay, we'll talk about. I didn't pick this album. So the album I was going to pick as a bonus album, I originally was going to pick, and this is a good album to talk about for this purpose, was not the latest Foo Fighters album.
Okay.
But here we are.
Yeah.
Right. So
That was second to last one, yeah.
They had one after that?
No, I'm thinking something else. Yeah, here we are.
That is their last
Yeah,
album.
it was the one
but I'm just
before
saying
that
it came
thing.
out 2 years ago, I think now. Okay, yeah. I didn't want to say new album. Oh, it came out 2 years ago. But it was their last album they came out with. I'm pretty sure it is, unless it came out with something else I'm not aware of. But what an amazing album that was. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm talking, that could be one of their top 3 albums that they've written, right? Yeah. And which is crazy because the only album I really loved before that was the one that came out, I think it was like 2011, The Light, Here in the Light or something like that. But that album was great. And then everything after that was kind of like... And you know what's funny too? So I was reading write-ups that people were doing about But Here We Are, and like why it was so good. Mm-hmm. And people immediately were like, well, it was it was because they lost Taylor Hawkins, and it was also because right after they lost Taylor Hawkins, Dave Grohl lost his mother.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, this amount of emotion that they were able to put into this album because of their loss, like that type of experience, like it enables them to be able to write this most beautiful music. And I think that really does have something to do with it. I think there has to be emotion behind it. And I think a lot of those albums, like their first couple albums that they had made were so good. And then they kind of got into this, I feel like it's almost like a record label thing, to be honest with you, where they're just like, hey, just write us one really good song, and then we don't really care what you do with the rest of the album because we'll sell millions off that reel. Because when you work with the radio, that's kind of, I felt like how it works. It was like, okay, write us an amazing song, we're going to put it on the radio, and that alone is going to sell us 20 million records, and we don't really care what the rest of the album sounds like.
Yeah.
You know? And in today's day and age, you can't really get away with that anymore.
No.
Like, you know, you can't, because you're not, first of all, you're not really selling records anymore, right?
Exactly.
So now it's like you either make a good album or a bad album. You do whatever you want. You can make one good song and the rest is crap, but everyone's going to know that the rest is crap, and you're not, you know.
Yeah.
But here we are as an album that I want on vinyl because the whole album is great.
Right, yeah.
Now you're going to say, well, they could have done this the past 10 albums and decided not to. I don't really think it's a decision thing. I think it's you have to have something behind the art. I mean, like there has to be some motivational something happening where there's this feeling that comes out, and those tragic things, that tragedies that have happened to them as a band enabled them to give them the emotion and the push to create an album like this. You know, I think it's a good argument. And, you know, it's like the big argument is, well, why is every band's first album their best album? Well, they wrote that album with nothing.
Yeah, literally.
And then every other album they wrote after it, they were kind of already rich and famous. So it's like, you don't really have enough issues anymore. You've solved all your life problems, I guess.
Yeah, unless you're the band had like the third album is usually the one that blows up for other bands. Unless you have like the overnight success album.
Yeah, I mean,
like
some people. No, I mean, listen. You know, I was trying to think about this. I think this past week I was trying to think of like, if I had to say a band from like even the '90s on, maybe I was gonna say 2000s on, but even the '90s on, who has almost like a perfect track record of not putting out any bad music. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard. I mean, like you could pick your bet. I mean, like your favorite band, but are you gonna say they have a perfect track record?
No, yeah, I don't think really anyone does.
Well,
I mean, I would say their
the argument would be Nirvana, but that's almost like cheating because the guy killed himself.
Yeah,
at the top of
2-3 albums and you're out. Yeah, it's easy. I mean, if you cut off every band at 3, I'm sure everyone would have. There'd be a lot more with perfect track records.
Yeah, correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why it's kind of like feels like it's cheating. I guess you could do the same thing with Alice in Chains, obviously with Lane Staley, but yeah, it's like any bands, because even the Strokes I feel like had weak albums. Mm-hmm. Their last album I think was great, but I mean I think they had a few weak albums in between where they kind of tried to get experimental and do like electronic synth stuff, and you know.
I think that scene was changing, and I think they tried to ride the change. And it didn't really work out.
Maybe. I think bands get bored, honestly. I think they're kind of like, let's try something new. Mm-hmm. I want to try this sound. Let's try this sound. And that's kind of where you get like concept albums from too. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, let's just do this concept album based on this. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. You know, there's concept albums that just become complete flops. Mm-hmm. And there's other times where it works out. Like even in this case, it works out and it becomes a really great album. And that's just... You know, that's just kind of part of like the experience of going into different sounds and trying different things. I don't hate on bands for doing that, and I never write a band off for anything because and Foo Fighters proved it right there. But here we are saying we can come back and create something, one of their best albums I think that they've ever written. So you can't ever say, well, they're done. They're never going to create anything great again, you know. And or like The Cure, like we were saying, The Cure comes back and writes
how many years? Yeah, over a decade.
And not even like, and that wasn't even like, oh, they stopped at a height. They made a lot of bad albums, like in the '90s and into the 2000s that were just like maybe there was one good song on them, but not compared to their '80s stuff. And then you could take this album and be like, no, this compares to their '80s stuff. This is a great album. Yeah. So you can't ever write anybody off. I don't think personally. So that I feel like that happens a lot with bands. Like they can come back and really create something great, and you know, for Titus and Andronicus, I hope they do. I mean, I seen them live at the Warsaw. I guess it was not far after the Most Lamentable Tragedy. I want to say it was before whatever album that they came out with after that. I don't even know what the album was now, but I saw them at the Warsaw. They were great. Yeah. They were. Oh, and you know what they do too? It is them, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's them. And I think they only do this in Brooklyn or New York, I should say. I don't know if they do this anywhere else, but I'm pretty sure they only do this in New York. And I can be wrong. You can find out I'm wrong. They open every setup with The Boys Are Back in Town, which is awesome. And not knowing that, because I'd never seen them before, was great. Just open up straight into The Boys Are Back in Town. I was like, that is an awesome opening song to just kill it with. And they did a great job. They killed it,
They haven't been super active recently, so I don't know what they're planning or if any new songs coming out.
I don't know. I didn't look at their recent
stuff. I've checked. It's been a couple years. Tours. I think they've done like a couple one-off shows around the area, but that's about it.
Yeah, hey man, I hope they put out.
That'd be nice.
Put out something new.
Maybe they have a comeback and next year they're around again.
That would be great. I mean, the Monitor I feel like is a must-listen to album.
Yeah.
Like I said, I like the Most Lamentable Tragedy too, and Local Business is a good album too. They've got a few good ones in the beginning. They had a pretty good track record. Great band, man. They were great live. But that's definitely an awesome album to check out. And then it was funny because when you picked it, I was like, oh man, I love Titus and Andronicus, and I was like, kind of like, you know what, I think that I should pick Gaslight Anthem only because that sound kind of reverberates with them with that whole Heartland rock thing. So I was like, you know what? I was like, we should do that because I knew you're a huge Gaslight Anthem fan. So I picked Gaslight Anthem, 59 Sound.
Another band with the huge Bruce Springsteen influence.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean,
the New Jersey bands can't escape.
They are a New Jersey band?
Yeah.
You guys, okay.
There you go. 59 Sound.
The one thing about this band and in this album especially, I feel like they never got like a lot of critical attention. Like they were never like a radio band or anything. Really. But it's nuts because they have the sound where I feel like they could be.
Yeah.
Like it's a super relative sound where like I feel like everybody would love it if they heard it, and like how has nobody really heard it type of thing. Like I don't really understand it. They have a very likable sound. They have like a very, it's funny because their sound, to me at least, is more like the sound. Like you want to say it's like it fits their persona of like the 59 sound. Yeah. But it kind of really doesn't at the same time. Yeah. Like if you listen to 50s rock, it doesn't sound like 50s rock. No, not at all. But it almost has like maybe it's his voice. It's something about the music. It almost has this like nostalgic feel to it. Yeah. You know, absolutely. this staticky nostalgic feel where it's I don't know. I love the whole sound of it was funny listening to the album from front to back. I'm like, I don't think there's a song in this album I don't like. Like every song is great. Album, like, you know, and it was like be hard for somebody to try to argue about like why it would be like a not a good album. I'm like, come on, it's the only thing I guess you could say is like maybe the sound itself is so familiar in every song. Like it's not, it doesn't go outside this boundaries of what they created for their sound, but it's a great sound. I don't even care. Like,
it works. Like I said, they don't really venture too far out, but what they do works. He's a great songwriter. I think Brian. His solo stuff's really good too.
Oh yeah, solo stuff.
He's
Okay.
a couple albums solo.
Okay.
He started out with like a big band, and then he just went like acoustic kind of solo. Really good.
Okay.
Probably has like 3-4 albums. But if you like that, it's very, very similar style.
All right.
Songwriting, arrangements, very similar.
Okay.
Yeah. Talking about like their mainstream appeal, it's funny because like you said, they don't have like broad appeal, but then they're kind of everywhere. Like the New Jersey Devils use their song as a goal song.
Do they?
Yeah.
Well, that has to be because they're from Jersey.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
The song's great too. How from what album? The album after this one, was that
Sink or
song?
Swim? Was that with it?
That Sink or Swim was the first
Was it the first one?
Yeah. Then see, I've heard it used in Monday Night Football. They've had it in like a video game used the song. So they're like in everything. But then one of the bands that people hear the song like, oh, this sounds familiar, or they like it, but they don't know.
I'm saying if you were to meet a random group of friends, none of them would really know who they are, which is they're not like a household name, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Which is kind of nuts because like. You know, you compare them to a band like Maroon 5. It's almost like, how is not everybody listening to this? Like, this is kind of crazy. Just because their sound, I feel like it could be so receptible to everybody. It was just odd to me. Like when I first started listening to them, I'm like, this isn't like some big commercial band. Like, how are they not? I mean, they're so good. They should be up there. But yeah. Yeah, you were saying this is like one of your favorite bands, right? We do the whole modern era of rock. What's your favorite band thing? And it's an extremely hard question for me to ask. I mean, for me to answer.
The Wall. It's hard to pick one.
Well, it's not that. Like I said, like there's so many bands I like for so many different reasons, and what happens is like with every band, I feel like I ride this wave with them, where like if I find out about them, I get into them, I love them. And then, like at a certain point, then I find another band, and then I just keep going with that, and then I can go back to each one and love. But like then to say, okay, my favorite, it's like my favorite would have to be like somebody with a good enough track record, or I don't know. It's hard. It's hard.
I have to go back and forth. You go to different eras of your life. That band's changed so many times, so it's really hard to pick. Say this is the one for me.
Yeah, I mean, like I could have said for a long time, it was the Strokes, it was Tame Impala, it was Osees. I mean, there's just so many different bands that I have gotten into for so long, and like I said, like when it comes down to track record, it's hard because a lot of these bands break my heart. Like they'll make albums that I love, and then they'll just start making stuff that's like, oh, were they trying with this, or they're just screwing around? And they're like, oh, it's kind of like it's hard for me to get amped up for people anymore. Like you know what I mean? Like I want to get amped up. I would love to get amped up, and sometimes I do, and sometimes it's like it's a crusher for me. Maybe the Arctic Monkeys. I kind of love everything they do. I guess that's kind of like the test, right? Like. If you even love their not so great albums, I guess that's your favorite band, right? And I guess they're kind of one of those bands where their worst albums or people hate, like I kind of think aren't that bad. Like I kind of like to listen to. So maybe it's the Arctic Monkeys. I don't know.
And like you said about how a perfect track record, like I would say right now, a guy that I would say that has to put out a bad album yet, like a guy like Zach Bryan. But his next album could be bad, and that could be super disappointing.
Well, country's very different.
Yeah. It's hard,
I think there are a lot of guys with perfect track albums in country right now. Yeah, not a lot.
Well, right now, but you always can put out a bad album.
But I mean, even it's hard. I mean,
there's definitely a lot of guys who have great track records right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of artists that have very good track records. I don't. Yeah, I mean that's also realistically what you're looking at with Zach Bryan too. Is he's very early in his career. I mean he's only been around for like 5 years maybe tops. So
it's pretty prolific. Yeah.
I mean he's making music at an unbelievable speed as far as putting out great albums. But he's not. It's not like he's been around for at least like a decade where you could say, okay, he's got a decade of writing music under his belt and he hasn't done anything bad. But he could be there, and I at this rate, I think he's going to be one of the greats for country.
Yeah.
Like I always say, I think Sturgill Simpson's one of the greats for country, and I think his last album was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a few things where he got a little experimental, which are kind of like the soundtrack he did, The Sound and Fury. I mean, I liked the hit songs on it. The rest of it was like, I don't know, you know. But he was also trying to go outside his box of country and do something a little bit different. I mean, he tries to do that with all his albums, I feel like now.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, that's the thing too. Like, I guess that's like another test of measurement. Like, if Zach Bryan's gonna consistently do the same music, then it's he might not mess anything up. But what happens when he tries to go outside his box?
Yeah.
Because there are people who go outside that box and still kill it.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So when he starts to get bored of the sound he's making and do something different, we'll see what it sounds like. And maybe he never does, and I don't know.
Time will tell.
Time will tell.
Last time I was on here, I had talked about merch cuts from bands and like venues. So I did a little more research.
Fact check yourself.
Yeah, a little bit. That was mostly right.
Okay.
So who brought it up? You know Jeff Rosenstock.
Yes.
His last tour, he had revealed like the percentage the venues took, like right up on his Twitter.
Oh, really?
He said a venue in New York City took 25% of his merch sales.
Okay.
That was the most by far, 25%. Other it was like 10 to 20% was normal.
Yeah, but that's all. But I'm saying not everybody's posting what their merch.
No, he was the one. He's probably the only one who straight up gave you the numbers.
Well, no, I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying the percentages could have been higher depending on the artist too.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I mean, you know, who knows when? I know one of the most expensive shows I went to at Madison Square Garden was Tool.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I forget they charged me an obscene amount for a T-shirt, and I'm like, they got to be taking a crazy amount for.
That's
this.
always been like that.
Yeah.
The big you go to an arena show, it's the venue's taking their big cut. That's why they're so expensive.
So I mean, that's my point. Jeff Rosenstock isn't even that big. I mean, who knows when Blink-182 goes there, what their merch sales are like as far as like what the cuts are.
I mean, they sound way more. Yeah.
But I mean, it's still crazy to me that they take anything really is kind of crazy.
It's
to
tough
considering they're making all the money for the venue, but.
It's getting more and more expensive to tour, and they're taking more and more from.
But that's the thing; they kind of got these guys, in a corner because it's like, well, what are you going to do? We're the only stadium in here.
Yeah,
you got us, you got MetLife, right? Yeah. Like, what do you want to do here?
Yeah.
Like, do you want to sell, 20,000, 30,000 tickets or whatever it is, or you want to go to a smaller venue, right?
Yeah. Even the mid-sized venues are doing the same thing, taking cuts.
The same percentages?
Yeah, basically,
really?
Probably around 20 to 25%, and it's hurting because now it's like bands are like we can't even afford to tour. It's not even about less profit; it's no profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading. Laura Jane Grace from Against Me, so she was talking about the way like some of the venues will do it, where it's like, all right, they'll use their merch guys. You say no, they say, all right, well, what'll happen is when you come in, we're gonna count every piece of merch, and then before you leave, we're gonna count every piece of merch again. And then you get paid. And so they're like, the show's over, and 2 hours later, and they're counting all your merch to see how much you sold, take their cut. And he's like, you can't win. And you can. Well,
how do you get around that, right? I mean,
that's the fight. Sometimes he said they literally would just run. They'd be like, just take the shit and go.
Oh man.
That's the only way. Other than that, they kind of have you.
Yeah, either that or you pay somebody to sell it in the parking lot, right?
That's what Van Halen used to do. Way back, they would have their guys go onto the merch.
Well, I always wonder, I'm like, how do these guys have the same merch from the inside? Yeah. I'm like, they now have a printing press in their apartment. These guys,
they didn't do this. Yeah.
Like they got to be getting it from somewhere. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if the artist was just like, listen, sell this.
Give you these shirts. We'll take $5 every shirt.
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing I can really think of with those because I'm like, all right, these guys didn't make these. Like, where are they coming from?
Because then what happens when they don't sell?
Because what that was? Did you watch? So did you watch when they did the show? It was the Hulu show for Wu-Tang.
No, actually didn't.
Okay, so they have it goes through how it's a realistic depiction. It's supposed to be actors portraying them on like a realistic story about how they came together and their whole journey through the whole thing. But when they get into the last couple episodes of them touring and getting big and all this stuff, there were guys who would show up to shows selling stuff that these guys were actually making on their own, right? Because like that's the idea. I mean, at least that was the idea. Like these guys got to be making their own. Where would they be getting them? They have to be making them somewhere or whatever. And that's what this guy was legitimately like making his own like Wu-Tang shirts and then showing up to concerts and selling them until they caught this guy. Yeah. And the funny part about it was that Wu-Tang liked the shirts he was making. So it was, hey, we'll hire you to make our shirts.
Shirts.
So now he gets
We'll
a
bring you
job
in.
working for Wu-Tang after. But I'm like, that's best case scenario. But I'm like, yeah, I'm like, these guys in the parking lot aren't making these shirts.
There's no way.
I'm like,
how would they know?
How would they get the same designs that are inside? There's
Yeah.
no way. Like,
They get all like they have it back with like all the tour dates on it. Like,
Yeah.
how do you know? And they make them this quick.
right, this quick. How do
Yeah.
they get so many?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a very enlightening part of that episode. I didn't know that they take that much of the merch, or if anything at all. I just always figured like that was how they make their bread and butter. Did he say how much that they take as far as like ticket sales?
They did say that. That's probably hasn't changed. Last I've heard, it's like 50%.
50
venue,
really? That's
yeah.
actually not. I
And
thought it
I'm
was
sure,
gonna
like
be
you
more
said,
than
it
that.
depends on the artist. They could probably negotiate more.
Yeah.
A bigger one. Like if it's like I've heard. So like Kid Rock used to do a thing where he talked about how his finances. So a lot of times bands will get a guarantee, and then if they sell a certain percentage, they get more. He did his tour where he told tickets were like real cheap, but he told the venue, "I'll take no guarantee at all. I'll put all the risk on myself to sell at this venue, and I'll make my tickets cheaper, but I'll take X percent of every ticket no matter what. And if this place sells out, he ends up making more than his guarantee would have been. But for them, usually it's pretty standard to get a guarantee plus bonuses based on how many tickets are sold.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, bigger places probably it's a different percentage, or sometimes bigger artists might take more, or management might take more. Who knows? Pop artists probably are not taking 50%. They're probably getting a fraction, and the label's taking most of the venue.
Oh, well, yeah, I wasn't even thinking of the label.
Yeah.
I don't even know how the label factors into that because as far as as I understood, the labels were in charge of like setting up the whole tour.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably.
Because they group the artists that you see based on they're all on the same label.
Yeah, usually.
So it's kind of like the label says, okay, we're going to put a tour together for you and two other guys who came out with a new album. And they kind of, so I can't even imagine how much that factors in, which is funny to me that the labels even play a part really at all anymore, considering I feel like they're just so useless.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know really what their purpose is. Like,
I mean,
what can they really do?
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as I guess making your actual vinyl, they take care of that too. Mm-hmm. So I guess you need it for that. I don't even know if you do though. I feel like you could probably figure it out on your own, right? Like some type of company that just makes albums. I don't know. I don't see really a purpose for it anymore unless I guess it's less work for you. You don't have to worry about a lot of things. I guess a lot of things are taken care of. Right, the tours are taken care of. The vinyl's taken care of.
They do everything.
They kind of do everything for you, and all you got to do is show up and play, right? Yeah. So maybe in that sense, all right, take a cut of what I'm making, and I just don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah. I could just write music and then go perform.
Right. So in that sense, I guess it would make sense.
It's
like
probably guaranteed. Like the labels can get you on tours that you probably wouldn't on your own.
Yeah, I mean they do all the negotiating for you, right? Like it's just less work. Like if you were going to set up your own tour, I mean I can't imagine the amount of phone calls and stuff that you would have to deal with.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, even if you hired somebody to do that, how do you know that they're going to do that better than the label's going to do it, or how good they are at it? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess maybe it's worth it for them. I don't know. It's got to be if they still exist, right?
But
I know
everyone's on labels.
Well, I was going to say, but I know a lot of artists also just create their own record labels.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
So I guess if you're creating your own record label, it's kind of like you are doing all the work.
It basically is you. Yeah.
Or you're starting that business where you're saying, okay, it's my record label. I'm going to hire this person to do this. I'm going to hire this person to do this. Hire this person to do this. Hire this person to do this. And then you just have to pay those people out.
Yeah.
Right.
You're just employing people. Yeah.
So. Yeah, I guess because, well, I mean, I guess you're thinking in terms of like if you're a record label or I guess if you're a band who has basically nothing and you're trying to get your name out there, and a record label says, "Hey, yeah, come on, we'll take a quarter of what you make, but we're gonna get you on tour with these guys." Like, you know what I mean? You're gonna be like, "Yeah, sign me up." Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I just write music. Like, it's supposed to be like, all right, we're all just dumb artists. We don't know how to do business. All right, then fine, sign up with a record label. They'll take care of everything, and they're gonna take a percentage. You know, and it's even if you did that though, right? Like, it's not that bad of a deal, right? Because, like, let's say the record label was like, listen, whatever you make across the board, we're going to take 25%, but we're going to take care of everything. But this kind of like allows you to like showcase your stuff and do more stuff. Like, it kind of gives you that opportunity you didn't have. So, I mean, in retrospect, I mean, like, if you were just going to try to make it on your own, it's like a lot harder to get to that point. So I guess, at least in the beginning, you know, the contracts are what gets me, right? Because they'll have you like, oh, we're going to sign you on a 3-album contract. So now, like, we own your next 3 albums. Like, that's a little scary to me. Like,
and it's worse. There are bands that get like 7 album deals and they're stuck for their whole career.
Right. Well, I'm saying 3 on the low side, but yeah, I know there's 7. I know that 5, I think, is a very common number for album deals. But the reason that's so dumb to me is because now you're putting like this unnecessary pressure on artists to create music under a gun. Like, oh, you got to get it done by. It's like, that's not how art is supposed to work, dude. You're not supposed to put a gun to somebody's head and be like, write me music now.
Deadline.
There's a deadline and we all need to make money. You're going on tour next year. Like, that's not like the circumstances you should be writing music under.
Exactly,
You should be writing music under your own circumstances. What they should do is say, okay, fine, whatever your next 3 albums are, we're getting 25%, and they have to be under us, blah, 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 but do it whenever you want. You want to come out with an album 10 years from now, fine. I hope it's amazing, but we're getting 25%.
Yeah, we're getting our cut. No matter
Don't
what.
put a deadline on them. Like, well, we need 5 in the next 10 years. It's like, that's a lot of pressure. I mean, yeah.
And like we said about bands as they go on, maybe not getting good albums anymore. Maybe that's a part of it.
100%. I was about to say that's probably deals with some of it. I don't know how many. I mean, it depends. Is Titus Andronicus on one of those type of?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not on one of those type of deals. But they could be. I mean, what do I know? I don't know anything about the business, but I mean, they could be on some type of deal with a record label. I mean, I think it would be dumb to put a really underground band like that on such pressure for what? I mean, you know, it's doesn't really make sense. You know, when you have like a radio star, I get it. It's like, okay, you want Ariana Grande to put out 5 because every time she puts out a record, she has 30 million fans who are going to buy 30 million. All right, I get it. You're doing the math here. But with Titus Andronicus, I feel like it doesn't work like that. If you pressure them to put an album and it sucks, you're not making any money.
No,
like nobody's making any money.
Yeah.
Like, so
the margins are small.
It doesn't really make sense to do that. I mean, you know, Taylor Swift could have put out her worst album and it's still going to make the record company $500 million or something. You know what I mean?
She's still selling on everywhere.
Exactly.
So
it doesn't really. That I can understand. Okay, you want to put her on a timeline? That's fine. It doesn't really matter. You know, she's going to make the money.
Yeah. Easily.
So that's why I would think albums like that really aren't under the gun. But since I've been talking about them, I'll go with my bonus album. So I'm excited for you to hear this album. What did you think? Did you like it?
I liked it. I liked it a lot. Was not expecting it, but in a good way. So I think the easy comparison is a band like King Gizzard, like the garage rock style, but I feel like it's a little lazy to compare them.
It's lazy to compare them only because they're more garage punk. Yeah. I feel like, but they do have they have the psychedelic rock, and they are kind of like King Gizzard. King Gizzard, I feel like it's hard to put anyone into their box because they're so all over the place with their genres and what they write and what they do, and they are also one of my favorite bands. And I kind of discovered both these bands kind of at the same time. I think. I'm trying to think of the name of the album. Was it I'm in Your Mind? Fuzz was the King Gizzard album, I think, that came out around the same time as Mutilator Defeated at Last. But this was the first album I heard by them. I go back and hear Floating Coffin, some of their other stuff, and they went on a span, like a good, I want to say like 10-year span of putting out really good albums or you know, for the most part, really good albums. Now they kind of like their last album, I think they tried to do like a synth punk album or something, and it's kind of like, okay, you got like 1 or 2 kind of good songs on there, and the rest is like whatever. But this is one of the guys, like I was saying, I forget his name, but the lead singer of the band, he owns Castleface Records, which is a record company that they use. So it's kind of one of those situations where he was kind of like, oh, I'm just going to make my own record company and I guess sign other bands under it and do whatever he wants to do, and kind of makes his own tours and all that type of stuff. But man, I mean, I was listening to this album again today. I was like, what a great freaking album, man. I mean, they're just so talented when it comes to, and they're one of those bands that they have 2 drummers.
Oh,
so when
no.
you see them live, that's always like the mind blowing thing when you see a band with 2 drummers live, because I'm like, how do they stay on pace? Like it seems almost impossible to stay on pace. But they're awesome band live. I'll get us tickets that they're playing in October, I think.
Yeah, you told me about that. I definitely
I'll get us tickets. They're an awesome band live. They have I think one of their live albums, I have it, is like rated one of the, in the modern era of rock, one of the greatest live albums. Live in San Francisco. One really great live album that they did. They're really amazing live. They put on a great show, and Mutilator Defeated Last, one of my favorite albums by them, probably. But yeah, Floating Coffin, another really great album. Okay. There's a bunch of them. They're awesome.
They have a lot.
Yeah, I saw. Like when you said you didn't really hear of them, I'm like, oh, Mike, you gotta listen to this. Garage punk, you'll love it, man.
Yeah, it was right up my alley.
I was like, you'll love it. But again, and it's crazy. They put out like King Gizzard, they put out an insane amount of albums, like almost one a year, I want to say. The amount of stuff they record and put out is astronomical. So they've got like a huge collection of work that you can go through like forever. But they're a little bit all over the place with the psychedelic, with the garage stuff, and they have a sound, but they kind of experiment a lot. You know, one of their oldest songs and one of the best songs they always play, Tidal Wave, which isn't even on any of their albums. Awesome song. Like it brings you back to like the surf punk type of rock, which is so cool, man. The psychedelic surf punk. They've got a sound that's really cool. And that's an album. That's also an album that's not like hard for people to get into.
No, yeah.
Like, you know, the songs are short. They're punky. They're not too crazy. It's not too hard. It's an easy album to appreciate on any level if you listen to rock and roll. So that's like kind of like one of my must listen albums. I tell people, like, if you're into that type of music, which I knew you were. That's why I was very surprised you hadn't heard of them.
Yeah, I don't know, just fell through the cracks.
Yeah,
I loved it.
But they are pretty underground. Like I said, it's there are these little bands everywhere. I feel like that you can every day I feel like I'm gonna find a new band and be like, how have I never heard of them? They've been making music this whole time and I didn't know.
This is exactly what I love.
Yeah, and that's just like it. I call it. It's like the endless hole of just music that's out there that you just don't know.
There's so much
that's out there.
Yeah.
It really is. And well, especially with the internet now,
Yeah.
because it's just so easy to put your stuff out there. And with the internet and all these millions of record labels, you know, it's easy to get signed. It's like you find like a smaller record label, they'll almost sign to anybody who's got somewhat of a following or the stuff sounds any good. So it's kind of like, all right, now you can make the vinyl and get your stuff online, and it's easy to get your name out there. You know, you pick up some shows, and if you're good enough, it almost makes it an even playing field competitively for all music. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, all right, everything's out there. Everyone has the same access. Yeah. You know, almost nobody listens to the radio anymore. I mean, what are you going to hear on the radio? Yeah, so it kind of like, if you are good, you'll make it, and people will know about you, and it's just it's weird. That's why when you find something you haven't heard, you're like, how have I not heard of this? But yeah, Osees were really great bands. But we'll see them in October. I think religiously they do Warsaw in October, because every year I check and I haven't seen them there in a while, but I always see it come up. Osees at Warsaw in like October, November every year. And sometimes they play though too. Have you heard? So they do. Sometimes. No, the list isn't going to be out yet. You ever heard of the Levitation Festival?
No.
Okay, so the Levitation Festival is a rock festival that they do in Austin every year. The last weekend in October in Austin, they do a Levitation Festival. and it's pretty crazy. So what they do is they take like 5 or 6 bars that do live shows, and then just for 4 nights straight, all day and all night, basically. I don't know when it starts or ends, but for most of the day and night, they just have a lineup of bands playing in all these venues. Right. So you can buy tickets to specific venues, because they'll give you the lineups beforehand. Like, these are all the bands playing at all the different venues. Or you can buy like a 4-day everything pack, which is funny because it's like you can't be in 4 places at once. Yeah. But the idea is like, okay, the headliner on this night, I want to see the headliner on this, and it's different places. So it's like, well, if I get the 4-day pass, I can just go wherever I want and do whatever. Because they're all like, I guess, in walking distance for the most part. So you can kind of just like bounce around if you have like this open all-day pass. I've never, and I'm speaking clearly from what I'm reading online, I have not been to this festival. I wanted to go a bunch of times, but there was a year where they had like Osees headlining at one of the venues, and then they had King Gizzard headlining at another venue, and then they have Black Angels. You ever listen to Black Angels? No. Oh my God.
Another one? All right.
I'll put you on the Black Angels too. But the Black Angels were headlining at like another one, it's just like one of those festivals which I wish. I don't know when it started, but so that's like another thing they do is they'll take some of the headliners, record them, and put out live albums from the Levitation festivals, which they've done with the Osees. They've done with King Gizzard. They've done with a bunch of different bands. Probably most of the headlining bands that have done it over the course of, I don't know, I want to say they might have been doing it for like 10 years now. But hopefully one year I can get down there and check it out.
Be great. Austin's a great city for that.
Oh yeah. And it's just cool because it's like the whole festival revolves around that type of rock. Like it's like this psychedelic garage, some bands are a little bit more like synth punk, new wave bands and stuff like that, but they're all like within that rock genre where you're like, oh, this is cool. It's like all the bands that are all playing this similar, you're not going to get anything like super crazy, like the Strokes will never be there or anything like that, but like, you'll get bands from those genres that just sound really good, and it's really cool. So hopefully I could do that one of these years, but you check out those live recordings that they do. Those are really cool too. I think I've got a few on vinyl from the Osees. I might have King Gizzard too, but yeah, that's a whole nother thing that's really cool about the Levitation Festival, that they do those vinyls. It's cool. You got to check it out. I think they're going to come out with the line. I think they do the lineup, or at least the initial lineup comes out every June.
Okay.
I know you're a big live show guy. That's why
absolutely.
I try to let you know about that.
Absolutely.
But, it's definitely something that you should check out because you're into it. And I mean, it's going to be hard for you and the kids, but hopefully eventually I can.
Like I say, it can't be a summer festival because Texas in the
summer.
No one's going there.
October's probably perfect. I mean, it's probably like great weather down there in Austin at that time. I'd imagine, at least. It can't be. It's not going to be brutal, Yeah. But yeah, it's probably beautiful weather, and you get great music. At night it's probably great too, because at night it probably gets like maybe the 60s, like not bad at all.
Cools down, gets kind of reasonable.
Yeah.
My only Texas experience was in July, and that was.
Where did you go?
I was in Austin.
Oh, you went to Austin.
Yeah, actually, I've been twice. Austin, and I've been to Houston.
There's a band called Texas in July.
Yeah, I know. Well, once I was there, I understood what it means. I'm like, it's
hardcore.
Yeah.
We were in Texas. I only went. I went twice. I actually did go to Texas in July. I think it was July. I think it was the beginning of July we went, or maybe right. No, I think it was right before 4th of July. I think we went end of June, beginning of July, and it's hot. I mean, it's brutal. Last time I went, we went to Fort Worth, and that was in May, I believe. It wasn't that bad. I mean, it's still hot regardless.
It's always good.
I actually don't mind the heat though.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather the heat than cold. The cold I hate. Like people want to go on all these trips to Canada. I'm like, I don't really care if I never go to Canada. Like I do not like the cold, the winds. I hate the winds.
Yeah.
If I could, I would live in the least windy city, which I looked it up. It's somewhere in Arizona.
Okay, yeah. The middle of the desert.
Yeah, it's I can't stand the cold, man. I have no problem with the heat too. My wife hates it. We go to Florida. And I'm dying. I'm like, I'm sweating, but I feel great. Like I don't really care. I could but that's the thing. I could sit in a sauna all day. Like the saunas don't bother me. Like I prefer it. Yeah. What were you in there for, like a bachelor party, or what were you?
Not a bachelor party, but just a weekend trip.
Just a weekend trip.
Yeah.
You didn't see any shows or anything like that?
No, I did.
Oh, did you?
Not live shows. I went to Rogan's Club. That was great.
Oh, so you went like within the last couple of years.
It was last year, I think, or maybe the year before.
Because it's only been open for like maybe 3 years.
Yeah, so it's probably a year or two ago. Yeah, I think not last summer, but the summer before.
Okay.
And it was great, yeah.
The Mothership.
Did that. Yeah, I went to Mothership, and then the rest of it was just up and down 6th Street, mostly.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's like
that's the street that they closed down.
Yeah, that's like the main. Think like Nashville has Broadway. They have 6th Street.
No. I went there. I don't remember any of the names.
Okay.
Well, because there's different parts. Like there's that street with all the bars that they closed down.
Yeah.
And then you could walk in the street and whatever, drink in the street. They let you do. I think. Yeah.
Only there.
Only in that street. Right. But then there's another part where like. It's almost like a row of houses that they turned into bars. Did you go down there? Like they have the container bar. It's like a bar with a shipping container made out of shipping containers. Yeah, so they had like a bar that's all these different shipping containers that they like basically put together, and that was pretty cool. And then they have like it was basically like they look like houses, but then you go in them and they're like bars inside. And like I remember like one of them was like circus themed. They had like a carousel in the living room. It was it was crazy.
That's great. Sounds like East Austin.
It's a different part of Austin. I mean, listen, I Ubered the whole time I was there and intoxicated. I don't remember. I couldn't tell you what the names of the streets. And this was also in 2017. It's 8 years ago now.
Oh wow.
So I don't remember. But I was there for my cousin's bachelor party.
Okay.
Great time. I mean, it was awesome. It was a
good time.
Great city, great food.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I had a blast. But then I was just jealous because then Rogan goes there, opens up the club, and I'm like, I want to go back and I not that I hate going back to cities I already been to, but there's just so much more that I want to see.
There's so many places I haven't been yet.
Yeah, it's like there's a million places out there that I'm dying to visit, and then for me to just like, I'm gonna go back to the same place. It's like, well, I do want to go back, but it's almost like I guess it's like opportunity. If there was some opportunity where I think it happened last year, I almost went to Austin because. A friend of mine wanted to go, and he wanted to go to the Mothership, and he wanted to go to the Formula One race too. I think
that's the big. They do the big one down there.
Yeah,
not the big one, but
I think it's the only Formula One track in America.
Pretty sure. I think you might be right.
Yeah, it's the only Formula One track in America. Unless they open another one, I'm pretty sure it's the only Formula One track. But they were doing something where I guess I don't know if they do this every time they have a race there, but there was some huge event. I think he said like. Eminem was doing a concert there too, or something. Like it was something big was going on there, and then he wound up not being able to go, and we didn't go. But it's guys like opportunity wise. But I like to be honest with you, I might go next time I go. It might be for the Levitation Festival, just because I want to go so bad. But I need another great lineup. Like it's got to be a stellar lineup. Like I'm not gonna go for one band. I have to like really want the headliners, and dude, those tickets sell out fast. It's crazy because the venues aren't that big. They're I mean, the bars there are much bigger than here. They have a lot of property and big backyards and all that stuff, but they still like not. It's not like you're going to a gigantic venue that's got 10,000 person capacity or something. It's basically still like a bar. So the tickets sell out pretty quick. And I don't know if they go on sale. I know they released the lineup in June. Maybe the tickets go on sale at the same time.
Probably around then. Let's keep an eye out for that. It might be.
But, I don't know. I got to figure it out. I got a bunch of places I'm going already this year.
Oh, nice.
So I don't know if I'll be able to do it this year. But hopefully in the future.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. If it sells out, they're not going anywhere.
Well, no, I mean, but they could always cancel it.
That's true, yeah.
Do they still do Warped Tour every year?
They brought it back this year for like 3 shows.
But see, and that's something you would say, well, that's never going anywhere. It's been around forever. And, then they cancel it.
They finished it, Tour. Actually, they announced Better Lovers are going to be doing it.
No, this year?
Yeah, but they're doing, I think, Orlando.
Oh, it's only in one place?
They're doing three
places?
I think DC, Orlando, and maybe Vegas or maybe California somewhere.
Vegas?
It's the weirdest thing. They're like, oh, we're not doing a full tour, just 3 nights. 2 nights, 3 different cities. I think that's it. I think so.
I mean, when you think about it, though, coordinating that has got to be a nightmare.
All those bands.
It's like
all those
100
buses.
bands.
Yeah.
You know, 100 bands to travel across America together?
Yeah.
I mean,
You probably can't do it anymore. I think
I don't know if you can or it's just like not worth it. Mm-hmm. Because the tickets weren't ever that expensive.
No, it
you
was
were paying like
always
$30.
insane, yeah.
How they made their money was they were doing it in basically like open fields where you can just sell like, I don't even know, probably like 100,000 tickets.
Yeah, lots.
So you were getting a massive amount of people, and on top of that, you were probably paying the bands almost nothing.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean?
They were, They were all young bands. They were probably happy to tour.
Yeah, I feel like
They didn't make much.
Warped Tour was always for like people trying to get their name out there. Nobody super big ever did Warped Tour.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the headliner's usually like a mid-level band that wouldn't do a crowd that size on their own, but could do Warped Tour and have a huge showing.
Right. Well,
Well,
the other thing is it also like showcases you. Like somebody goes for another band, now they see you. It's kind of like opens up the door a little bit for a lot. And a lot of bands would say that. I remember like you go to Warped Tour, they would be like, "Hey, if you've never heard us, this is the song you want to listen to." Like, trying to like this is their introductory song to get you into the band. Like, and I'm not even gonna lie. It wasn't Warped Tour. It was I used to go. Which I don't even think they do this. They don't do Bamboozle anymore, do they?
No, yeah, that's over. It's been
so
over.
that was something I did
yeah.
religiously, and that was only one weekend.
Yeah, one long week. They were Live Nation bought it, and then they lost money, so they canceled it.
Yeah,
but they did the 1 year where they had like the Foo Fighters, Blink-182, My Chemical Romance all headlining. So they had all the biggest names, but they didn't sell enough
that
tickets.
was when they did it in Asbury.
Yeah,
I'm talking about when they were doing it at
MetLife.
MetLife.
That was they didn't have those.
I was going religiously every year. I turned 17. I went. And then I went every year after that for probably like 4 years.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe even longer because, or maybe I skipped a couple of years, but I went to the one in Asbury when I seen Foo Fighters there. Actually, Blink-182 backed out. They got sick. But that was when they subbed in My Chemical Romance for them. But that, so funny enough, that was how I first heard of Every Time I Die.
Really?
Because they played at Bamboozle.
Yeah.
And what I did was I looked at the lineup and then I would not know who they just start listening to bands. And I think like maybe I had heard one song. I think it was probably, Kill the Music or whatever. It was probably like the one song that I had heard. And I remember being like, oh, I think they're playing over here. Let me check them out. And like just blown away by their live performance. Like blown away. Like they had a circle pit bigger than the stage going on. Like crazy. And and obviously at that point I didn't know they were from Buffalo. Everybody was there wearing Buffalo stuff, which blew my mind. I'm like, these dudes drove down from Buffalo for this. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Like just people wearing Buffalo, jerseys and hats and all that stuff. Yeah. And I remember he was like, I'm getting thirsty, and somebody throws up like a full can of beer, and he catches it, chugs it, and throws the can back. I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen it. It was kind of like one of those things where they put on such a great show. They sounded amazing, and he knows how to entertain the crowd. And my first live performance by them that I seen, and it kind of like got me into them even more. And I remember going home and listening to them more, and going back and their older stuff, and just. That was kind of like a jump-off point for me with them. Obviously, they're one of my favorite bands now as far as getting into them. So, I mean, it worked, right? I mean, they did a show, probably got paid next to nothing, but...
They got more and more fans, got this huge show,
So, I mean, I think that's why like a lot of bands would do Warped Tour.
Yeah.
But
it was a known thing that smaller bands would get blown up. Like all the big famous metal bands of the early 2000s was on Ozfest. Like Disturbed, Slipknot, System, they all were nobodies, got on that tour and blew up off of that. So I'm sure it's the same exact thing from Warped Tour.
Yeah, another thing that died out, right? Ozfest is
that model's old.
So what is out? Is there anything like that anymore? Because they don't do the Rockstar Mayhem anymore.
No, Mayhem's done too.
Mayhem's done.
All of them are done. There really isn't. I don't think so. Seems like everyone's just doing festivals in the cities, and the bands just literally the same bands will just play every festival.
Yeah.
You lost it.
I was gonna say I think they do like 1 day or 2 day or 3 day festivals in one city, but nothing traveling. I mean, really, was there anything like Ozfest traveled, right?
Yeah.
Ozfest traveled. So I guess it was Warped Tour, Ozfest, and like those traveled. But I don't even think Ozfest had as many bands as Warped Tour.
they
Warped
didn't.
Tour, I felt like had like 100 bands.
Yeah,
like it was like
everything.
a crazy amount of stages.
At least 6.
Yeah.
Going
I worked at Warped Tour one year. Well, it was something where like my friend's sister was working somewhere in like the music industry or something, and she did something with Warped Tour, and she asked him like, hey, do you want to work like as a vendor? Like we sold Gatorade all day.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like 18, and I was like, I'm gonna get paid to go to Warped Tour. Like, I'll
Awesome.
take it. But you don't get to see like.
No, you're in.
You don't get to.
You're nowhere
see
near the
anything.
stages.
You can't hear anything.
Yeah, no.
Kind of not exactly worth it. Like I remember, I think somebody offered me like a job years ago at MetLife, like just working at MetLife is, I don't even know if it was like security or doing whatever, but I'm like. Yeah, but you don't really get to enjoy when shit goes on. Like you don't, like you're there, but you're working. Like it's not the same.
You're not going to be able to see much. Yeah.
Like who knows where I'll be? I could be in a back room. Like they're not gonna.
Yeah.
You know.
You'd be selling on the 3rd floor in the back. You're not even see it. You'll hear it.
Yeah.
You'll hear all the fun.
Or you'll hear something.
Yeah.
You're not gonna hear it like you're there.
No. You have to be home at that point, watching it.
Right. Well, yeah, they were like, yeah, you'll get to see every home Giants game. And I'm like, but to what extent? I'll be there, but to what extent am I really enjoying it? Yeah. So I turned that down.
I say, because if it was that good, the job wouldn't be available. People would be fighting for that job.
You would think, yeah. I don't know. Isn't that one of the things Rogan always talks about? He used to work security at one of the venues in Boston, and he got to see all these like live bands play and stuff like that.
Yeah, who knows? The door guy, I guess, he didn't just.
I guess it depends on where you are, but I mean, like, you'd be like, all right, front row, you're the guy who catches the crowd surfers. You're still not enjoying the show.
No.
Yeah, you're front row, but you're not enjoying the show.
Yeah,
You're doing stuff. You're distracted.
Yep.
They're not setting up a seat for you to hang out and watch the show. That's not how it works.
That would be nice.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't be getting paid to do that. But yeah, I mean that's why I never took any of those offers. I just felt like it really wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
Plus the job always probably sucks. It's like something you don't want to do.
No, yeah.
It's nothing fun. They're not like, well, yeah, you get to help hand out autographs. Yeah. You get to walk the artist back to his bus.
Oh, sweet. And if you're lucky, he'll let you hang out with him. Huh?
No, it would never be like that. But or at least that's what I figured. It's why I never took the job. Who knows? Maybe somebody gets to do that. I'm sure.
Someone's like, I can't believe you turned down this job.
Somebody with the most time on at that job. Mm-hmm. the guy's been working at MetLife for 20 years. Gets to do all that stuff.
All that time put in.
Yeah. I don't know. What shows do you have coming up? Do you have tickets or anything?
Let's see.
Besides,
coming up recently, not really, but I got lucky and I got 2 tickets for Oasis this summer.
Oh,
I can't believe it. Yeah.
Nice.
They had the reselling app. It just popped up randomly, and I got them. I got 2.
You mean you can't resale? Because like a lot of times people buy tickets, they're on resale because because of how the way the system works, they sell out and then you resell and you buy them for higher. So like you couldn't buy them off like Live Nation resale? No.
So you can only Ticketmaster resale or there's another app, Twickets it's called, which is like I guess a third party. So you can only sell them for face value. They can't jack the price up. So very, very few tickets have been available. So
wait, you mean specifically for that show or in general they can't?
In general, they can't sell the whole tour. You can only resell them for what you paid. You can't resell them for profit.
No, but I'm saying like you can buy resale tickets on Ticketmaster. They jack the price up.
No, it's the face value. But they're doing that dynamic pricing. But whatever they paid for, that's what they resell it for.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is what's making it hard because everyone who bought tickets holding them because no one bought them for profit. So
yeah, because we got the tickets to System of a Down and Corn, and my friend was like, oh, they sold out the first day, and then they opened the second day. He was like, all right, I got them for the second day, but then my other people wanted tickets, so I went to go buy it, and I bought them for the first day, and I'm like, oh, these has just got to be resale, but they're they've got to be jacked up, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
They just were resold for really expensive.
yeah.
Yeah, I think they were going for like $250 for the first.
Oh, I didn't even get them for two. Well, I probably got really bad seats, but I think we got them on resale for like almost 200.
Yeah, that
Close
about makes
to it.
that about
Yeah.
that's about
But what
face value.
was? Do you know what the face value? Oh, that is face value.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah. It's got yeah.
But then why they resold it all? Like I don't understand.
People just can't go, so they get rid
You
of
think you're already?
it. Yeah. Or
6 months before? Oh, I really jumped the gun. I forgot. I'm getting married
damn.
that weekend.
I could make it after.
That actually almost happened with the. I don't know. I probably told you with the Deftones tickets.
Mm-hmm.
I only had known the date of the Madison Square Garden show.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend was like, "Hey, do you want to go to Madison Square Garden Prudential?" I'm like, "I don't care, whatever." I'm like, "It doesn't matter to me." And then he was like, "All right, I bought it for Prudential," and I wound up going back and looking at the date. I was a day away from not being able to go. So it's literally like the Deftones show, and then the next day is the rehearsal dinner for Zach's wedding, and then Zach's wedding.
Oh wow.
I was like, "Wow, that came close."
Yeah.
So I was like, I will just be able to go to this guy's, and I'm like, I really should have checked the dates on everything before I said, yeah, I don't care. Like,
Yeah, pick a show.
because that would have sucked. I'd been like, yeah, I don't care. He picks Prudential. Oh my god! I'm like, I can't.
I'm out.
Just like that, and I'm out.
We'll trade.
Yeah, it didn't even like.
No, yeah.
I had the Madison Square Garden date in my head, not even realizing that obviously the Prudential Center would be a different date. And not looking at it, I was like, I got really lucky on that one. Are you going to that show or no? You never got tickets.
I didn't get tickets yet. I still want to. I just see if it come up. That's what's coming up soon.
Yeah, Deftones are on my wish list, so I gotta
Yeah.
see them. And
I saw them once before.
Mars Volta too is on there. Which
Oh, yeah.
is
I think
always
they're
on
opening. I
my-
forgot about that.
Yeah, Mars
That's
Volta
great.
is opening, and Fleshwater,
Yeah.
another band. I was like, I'm killing it on this
That's great,
one. I'm
yeah.
like, all these bands I
1,
want to
2,
see.
3.
Yeah, I was like, I'm excited for obviously excited for Deftones, but to see Fleshwater is cool too. Deftones didn't put out a new album, right?
No, they haven't.
Okay. I thought like they're going on tour, they'd put
Yeah.
out a new album, but they haven't put
100%.
anything out. Maybe they're showcasing some of their work there. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm sure maybe they'll be a few songs. If they have them lined up, I'm sure they'll have one or two.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I haven't heard anything. They haven't put out anything.
No,
And the show's coming up. You would think they would have even a single or an EP or something, but no.
Have you checked the track list as far as what they're playing? Like,
No, I haven't really looked yet.
I didn't look either. I meant to. I just keep forgetting. But I was gonna check their track list to see if they were like, like new song in parentheses. Like, okay, they're playing some new stuff, which would be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a pretty good record, man.
They're
I mean, they
another,
don't really. I mean, when you talk about, they're obviously metal and not rock, but like talking about metal, they've got a pretty solid track record as far as not putting out anything terrible. At least, I don't know. People say like Gore was bad. I'm like, I actually like that album. I don't know. I don't think it was that bad.
It wasn't terrible. I mean, it doesn't live up to the rest of the stuff, but
but-
it was solid.
But
Nothing wrong with it.
And I also feel that's kind of like the effect of being a great artist. Is like everyone's comparing everything you do to like your best work.
Yeah, it's not
like,
fair.
It's not fair at all.
Because
Like,
your opinion would change if it was a different band.
right. All right. Let me put this album out under a different name, and you think it's somebody else. You're gonna give it amazing ratings. Oh, this album's because you're not comparing it to Deftones' greatest album.
Yeah.
It's a new band.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's the way I look at it, at least.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot when bands try to change their sound. I know too. Like one of the examples with that was when Arctic Monkeys came out with Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, and that's clear. You ever hear that album?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's clearly a concept album of them trying to make, which is pretty funny in the sense of how they did it. They made casino lounge rock, which I don't even know if that's tried to be done before, but they did it, and in my opinion, they nailed it. I think it's not a bad album. It doesn't sound like their other albums, granted, 100%, but it's not bad. Like, people hate it, and like I feel like that's where it comes from. Like, no, I want the same stuff they've been putting out for the. It's like,
say no.
okay, yeah, they tried something new, and you're gonna hate them for it. I don't think it's a bad album. I think they actually, for what they tried to do, I think they killed it. If you're not into that genre, fine, but just to say it sucked because you don't like that style is kind of unfair, in my opinion. you know, that's one of those things where I think, like, if other people who were into that knew that existed and listened to it, they'd be like, this album's amazing. And it's like, yeah, they're put into this other category because of what their other music is. So off the bat, everyone's like, well, this album's garbage. And it's like, well, it's not garbage. It's not it's not part of the category that they're put into. So you're comparing apples to oranges. Like, you know what I mean? It's not really fair to do that.
Yeah.
And that used to happen even back in the day. I know they were saying, like, in like classic rock days or before that, when people would try to do something outside of their realm of what they're normally doing, people are like, oh, it's their worst album. And then, like, people go back and now and they're like, actually, this album is groundbreaking. It's like, yeah, it was groundbreaking then. You didn't give it a chance because it didn't sound like their other stuff. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I hate that excuse of it doesn't sound like their other stuff. Dude, they're artists.
Yeah, they're supposed to evolve. Could you imagine, like, bands, like, still putting out, like, think about bands that put out albums about, like, being angsty young kids. Could you imagine being in your 40s doing that stuff?
Yeah, well, there are.
Oh, yeah.
Bands.
Sure, yeah. But
I don't have to imagine there are.
Yeah.
And some of them kind of, I mean, like, I don't know, Blink-182 kind of did that. I mean, like,
yeah.
And their newer albums weren't even bad. Not comparable to their earlier stuff, but, like, yeah, I mean, there are bands that have done that. I mean, yeah, it's got to be harder. I always think about that too. I'm like, this band's been around for a while. How old are these guys?
Yeah.
Or you can do that with, like, emo music. Like, you can't be 50 and putting out an emo album. Like, bro, come on.
Get over it, man.
That's for teenage.
Yeah.
When you were a teenager, it made sense.
Yeah.
Evolve. Like, you know what I mean?
And most of them are, right?
And you know who did? I don't know if you were a fan of this band. I was always a fan of this band, and they made an awesome change in that. It was Brand New.
Yeah.
Brand New came up. What the hell? Science Fiction. That was the name of the album. They evolved.
Yeah,
they actually evolved throughout their whole career.
Yeah.
Very different from what is it? Your Favorite Weapon and stuff like that. They've evolved working up, and I feel like they lost their fan base because of it. And at the same time, I'm like, that was kind of revolutionary to me because I'm like, this band's been around for a long time, has evolved, and probably can't keep the same crowd because they've evolved. But looking at their entire portfolio, they've done an amazing job at what they've done.
Yeah.
Every album they kind of nail it, and they're doing a great job of it. And I'm guilty of it too because I remember when Daisy was the name of the album, I think, right?
Yeah.
When that album came out, I was like, oh, this is nothing. Like, now I go back and listen to Daisy. I'm like, Daisy's amazing. I'm like, but I was expecting that, like, that sense of, like, you know, young punk type of genre that they'd been putting out, and just was so turned off by the way Daisy sounded. It's almost like, I wasn't mature enough to really appreciate a band being able to change their sound and it being good. You know, so it kind of, like, teaches you this lesson to kind of try and look at everything from this new perspective. And again, that's why I don't like hyping bands up, because, like, you're expecting something. I don't want to expect something and I'm not getting what I'm expecting. Like, you know what I mean? And I do that all the time. Like, the new Jason Isbell album is about to come out.
Yeah.
What is it? Does it come out next week?
I think it came out. I think it might be out today or tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I think it is out tomorrow.
Yeah,
actually, now
the
I'm talking
5th.
about
Yeah,
it.
tomorrow.
And I don't even want to listen to the singles yet because I want to listen to it from front to back. But I'm already like, I'm gonna really let myself down. I feel like I hope I don't, because I loved his last album so much. It was so great. And this is what I do to myself, and then I'm gonna expect something, and it's gonna be something completely different. So yeah, I'm crossing my fingers for that one tomorrow.
I mean, he's a guy who you could probably say so far hasn't put out a bad album either.
Well, didn't he put out an album before Weather Vanes that wasn't that good?
I wouldn't say not good, but wasn't. Well, Weather Vanes you can't compare to that. That's like But what was it called? Reunions was
no, it was after Reunions. I'm telling you, I think there was an album. It might have been like some type of. I was just looking at it today and I can't remember the name of it. But it was funny because I was like, I didn't even know this album came out, and it was like an album that I guess maybe it flopped, or maybe it was like a collaboration album with somebody else, but I don't think it did very well. And I hadn't even heard any songs of it, so it couldn't have been that great. But I remember when Reunions came out, I actually thought Reunions was the last album he did before Weather Vanes.
Okay.
And then I saw this one in there, and I'm like, okay.
So, I don't know what album you're talking about. So I know he had the Ryman came out after that.
Actually, I don't even know where my phone is. So, here it is. I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Even though I don't like to go on my phone on these, but it's gonna kill me if I don't show you the album at least. Look, I still have it open. Look, it's called Georgia Blue.
Oh wow, I don't even know.
Yeah, well, that's my point. Let's see his discography right here.
Okay, Georgia Blue. Yeah, I didn't even.
It came out after Reunions, but before Weatherfans. That's what I was saying.
Is it even out on it? Is it even on? It's on Spotify, obviously, but I don't even. Or is it on Spotify? I don't even think I've seen it.
According to this, it is on Spotify.
Wow, I don't even. Never even seen it. Or
But
heard
that's
of it.
what I'm saying. I'm like, it can't be. I mean, even on here, it's got not good ratings. It's so. I mean, well, that was the thing too. Like a lot of people will be like, "Oh, this artist has a perfect track record," and I'll be like, "What about this album?" And they'll be like, "What? I've never heard." It's like, yeah, you've never heard it because it was terrible.
They try to hide it.
Yeah, they bury that shit, man. Like, we flopped on this. I'm not gonna make this known.
Trying to wipe it from everyone's memory. You know, you always tell an artist knows that when they don't play anything off it. Usually they find a song to play off, but yeah.
But that's why like it kind of stinks to see bands like older bands that are still putting out new music because they're gonna like hammer in their new stuff, and it's like, dude, why are you doing this to us? Like, just do. It's almost like I'd rather see them play like one of their greatest albums from front to back and just do that than have 5 songs off your new album that nobody wants to hear. You know? And you almost feel bad because they put work in and they put it out and they're trying to create new stuff, but
it matters to them.
It matters to them.
You hope it does. You know, you hope they.
And it matters, I guess, to like really hardcore fans.
Yeah.
You know, who just like, you ever meet somebody like that? Like, I don't know if you're like this with any artist, so I don't want to like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to offend you before I start saying this.
That's all right.
Like you're aware that the Gaslight Anthem has put out not good albums, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Get Hurt was. I liked it, but it wasn't like their best. I will put it as 5th.
Right. No, but I'm saying like I've met people who are like, oh, Incubus is my favorite band. It's like, okay, but their new stuff is terrible. They're like, no, it's not. And I'm like,
I love it.
All right, well then, like you're on another. I'm like, listen, you're clearly the guy who wants to hear their new stuff when they play an album. Like, yeah, it's funny when you meet somebody like that. It's like, listen, I appreciate you liking that, and that's fine, but I just, it's almost like you have to understand. Like, I think you have to say, I like it, but I understand it's not that good. Like, I understand it's bad, but I still like it for whatever, because I like it and whatever. But you got to understand that it's like not that. You got to be able to compare and be like, okay, it's not. But and then I also feel like that's another thing. It's like, do they think that's good because what else are they listening to?
Yeah, true.
Like, are they like one of those people who have like 5 bands and then they just keep only listening to those bands' new albums and like that's it?
Yeah.
Because then it's like, all right, maybe in that realm it's not that bad.
Yeah. When you compare it,
because it's all comparison, right?
Yeah.
If you're only listening to radio, like this is like the kind. I try to do this thing where I was like, okay, did I talk about this already on a different podcast? I don't want to repeat it, but I'll like hammer this in. The biggest comparison I can make, like I'll have people be like, oh, I can't listen to country. Country is terrible. And I'm like, well, you're talking about what you're hearing on the radio. And they're like, yeah. And I'll be like, okay, well, you're a big hip hop fan. Yeah, okay. Do you listen to hip hop on the radio? Like, no, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you
It's
see
the
where I'm
same.
coming
Genres
from? No, it's the
aren't
same
different.
thing. Like, you
Yeah.
can't listen to the radio and then say, well, that genre is terrible. I'm hearing it on the radio. And it's like, well, yeah, it's on the radio. There's no good genres on the radio.
Yeah.
Well, hardly ever. There's some artists break through. Like, so they'll play Kendrick Lamar on the radio sometimes. And how can you not? But for the most part, I mean, there's no hip-hop station or country station that's playing the good part of that genre. Like, it's just not happening. So, I mean, if all you're exposed to is that, then yeah, I understand why you hate it. And that's really, for the most part, why I disliked hip-hop for a long time. I was huge on hip-hop in the 90s. 2000s, radio hip-hop, there was no internet yet. Radio hip-hop was terrible. And I'm like, all right, I give up. I'm not listening to this anymore. And then it wasn't until I was introduced to Good Kid, Mad City where I was like, wait, hip hop
here.
might be back. And then, you realize there was a change of pace. Not even to say that hip hop was completely dead in the 2000s. There was a lot of good underground conscious hip hop that survived, but it wasn't in comparison to the amount of good hip hop coming out now. There's no comparison.
No.
I mean, it's just the amount of great hip hop across the board right now is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's like really Renaissance era, and it's same thing for country. Same thing for country, except country to me, I mean, really, I mean, to find good country in like the 90s and 2000s is freaking
tough,
hard.
yeah.
There's only so many artists, and even in those artists, there's only so many good songs or albums that those artists have. Like, it was really barely alive, and even those songs and those artists, really, I don't think were played in mainstream country during that time. So I mean, the reason that I never wanted to get back into country was because being exposed to that country for that time, I was like, there's nothing good out there. And again, all it takes is one album. Sturgill Simpson's Metamodern Sounds of Country Music, and I was like, holy crap, we're back into making good country again, you know? And I try to tell people, like, listen, the country that you hear, the hip hop that you hear on the radio, it's not the same. You gotta really, and I mean, I feel bad. You actually gotta do work to find good music, or just listen to me.
Listen to this podcast.
Just click subscribe,
like and subscribe.
I'll bring it. It was funny. One of my friends actually said that. One of my friends was like, he goes, the podcast is good and everything, but honestly, the reason I'm gonna keep listening is just to hear new music from you. Listen to.
Great. Yeah.
Like, listen, I'll do the work for you. I don't care.
Just listen up. Yeah, happily too.
I've done it, and it's for a lot of people, it's just like, what are you into type of thing. Like, tell me your genre, and I can tell you bands that are in that genre, and then you can kind of go from there. But yeah, it's a lot of people, and I used to believe it too. A lot of people like, all music is dead, and it's not. And for a while, like, I thought that might be the case, and then no, once you get the avenue of being able to see all the great music that's being made right now, and you're like, oh, this is never ending. It's literally, I could spend all day, and then just find these nuggets of gold, and it's just becomes worth it at the end. It's funny too. Like, I'm going back right now, and I'm trying to go back over like my classic rock playlist, and it's funny how much like you forget when you stop listening to a genre for so long, and you're like, wow, there's so much in the 60s and 70s for like classic rock. There's so many bands, like there's just so much content. It's like overwhelming. And it's cool to go back sometimes and re-listen to that stuff, especially from a different view, because the more music you listen to, the more it changes the way you think about older stuff as well. You can go back and listen to things in like a different light, and that's, like kind of what happened in general with Velvet Underground and Joy Division, which people still be like, who?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Well,
Velvet Underground especially.
That's the story of their career. Who, right?
Yeah.
They sold 10,000 records, but inspired 10 million artists, right?
Yeah, like you said, started like they put out one album, go nowhere, and then someone discovers it, blows up, but it's kind of too late. Well, Joy Division, it was never going to come back. Joy Division is New Order, right? Just they became New Order,
without the lead singer,
singer.
which they had major success as New Order, right? But yeah, Joy Division, they had a hard time getting viewers. Like their biggest comparison, I think, was like the Buzzcocks or whatever, and even they weren't really big.
Another
so
Who.
There was I don't think, as far as catalog, I don't think you can compare Joy Division to Buzzcocks. Buzzcocks had maybe like 10 good songs. Joy Division's got like, I don't know. I mean, they only had 2 albums, 3 albums, or whatever.
Yeah.
But their albums you could listen to front to back. They're amazing and groundbreaking too. As crazy as groundbreaking as Velvet Underground was for being able to put out that type of punk rock and stuff like that. I mean, they're just to think they got glanced over is just so funny, because they got glanced over, but Pink Floyd didn't.
Yeah.
They were progressive as hell, man. For Pink Floyd to not get but you know what's funny about Pink Floyd too is like nobody really knows their best work, right? Because their best work where they kind of like really shine is in those really deep, like progressive songs, like those songs that they made, like Shine On You Crazy Diamond and stuff like that. They can't even play that stuff on the radio. They got well known off the shorter, more commercial stuff. You know, like the Wish You Were Here and Time and
Wall,
Money,
yeah. Or the shortened version of the Wall.
the shorter version of The Wall, right? Well, because The Wall's supposed to be in parts, right? And all that
Yeah.
stuff. Shining You Crazy Diamond is supposed to be in parts too, but really you're supposed to listen to it in whole. But you know, like most people probably even heard anything off Animals, like
Nah.
you know what I mean, and that could possibly be some of their best work. So I mean, you know, I guess in perspective when you look at it, like yeah, people know Pink Floyd, but they don't really know Pink Floyd, or maybe like yeah, the hardcore fans do, the people who really listen to that stuff, but their really most impressive work is in the work that most people don't listen to. So I mean, I guess that's kind of how you look at it. But it was just crazy to me because when you look at Pink Floyd as a whole, like that, how out there they are and how progressive they are. Like I can kind of understand bands like Rush and Rush came a little bit later, I guess, but like Yes, because they had this kind of like poppy vocals to them, and you can kind of put their songs on the radio and they're catchy and they did stuff like that. So that I kind of get. Pink Floyd just seems so out there that it's almost crazy that they got the success that they got as like a household name across the universe. You know what I mean? Being that their sound is so different, but I mean, it was a lot of talent there. I mean, I guess they deserve it, right? But
Yeah.
then to say like, oh, the Velvet Underground got completely glanced over. Like they should have been opening for Pink Floyd.
when you compare the two, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Like you said, their strength was probably more in like influencing people versus the actual strength of the music, which was good, and it was for the time was brand new.
Well, it's influential. It's influential because it was so different, and when you're able to create something that's so different and has such a unique sound, that's what pushes other artists to go even further with their work, and that's kind of why they're so influential because. You could be like, all right, this album was created, I'm sorry, when?
Yeah.
In the 1960s?
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, and then they took these sounds that were never really, you know, incorporated much in music. And, you know, I mean, that's the greatness behind Lou Reed. I mean, yeah, they just were able to experiment and do things and have, I would say, success with, but success in today's time. But, yeah, it's kind of it kind of sucks that they didn't get what they, you know, the recognition I guess they deserved back then. And I'm sure there are a lot of bands like I compare them to King Gizzard. I'm like King Gizzard definitely isn't getting the recognition they deserve, and they're all over the place as far as being able to create sounds that are just across the board everywhere. Like they're just all over the place, and to make it sound good, you know, it's funny. I'm like. They would I was like if they came out in the classic rock era they would have to be big. I'm like if they have that sound,
or maybe they get lost in the shuffle
in the shuffle. Yeah,
but no, I think they would definitely stick out just because their talent, their how prolific they are, their styles,
and they're diverse. Like that was one of the things that always drew me to Led Zeppelin was how diverse they were able to sound. Like. I remember like first getting into them like in high school and being like, hold on, wait a second. They wrote this song too? Like doesn't sound anything like their other stuff. Like they were able to make stuff that sounded completely different, but it's the same band. Like that kind of thing like blew my mind. A lot of bands that had a lot of success like didn't really do that as much. Like I feel like the Stones were always the Stones.
Yeah.
Like they never really got super crazy with their sound or did anything conceptual. Like even the Who, you know, they had Quadrophenia and Tommy, and they were able to kind of like push their limits a little bit, starting off from like what I feel like they kind of like started punk rock at the beginning of punk rock with the way they played songs like My Generation and stuff like that. I think kind of really paved the way for punk rock in general to come out later on. But I feel like, you know, there were just bands that existed in their sound and did it good and because they were successful in it and, you know, not taking anything away from them. But it was weird. I was looking at like reviews from like Steve Miller Band and like people really hated on them. And
there was a weird one, yeah.
But I don't know why they were like, I don't know. It was weird. I was like, Like I was looking at the rate, like people are like hated the song "The Joker." I'm like, it's such a good song though. I'm like, I don't understand why people are not liking that song, or not.
All songs to pick. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not that it's like crazy out there where they did something super nuts, but like, I mean, it's a great song, especially because it goes with that time period. I feel like where they just did a good job with all their music. Really, I think a lot of their songs. I don't know. It was weird. It was one of those bands I feel like are being downplayed. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm like, was there something where he made some type of racist comment online or something, and I didn't pick it up, and that's why everyone's like, screw them.
Yeah, we hate him actually. He's actually a bad person for listening to him.
Yeah. Get a bunch of hate mail after this.
You didn't know about
that guy killed a dog once. Like, no, I didn't know.
Man.
So what else you got on your plate? You have. I'm sorry. What was the band you were going to see now? You said it. Oasis. Right. We totally left that topic for whatever reason. Oh, we were talking about
we kept going.
Yeah, but that was such a cool band to see, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. I really thought it was never going to happen. I thought it was just they were done and they were never going to get back together.
Never say never, man.
Yeah,
never
true.
say never.
Their history.
What is it? Slayer's on their. Are they doing
second
another
part of their
final?
I can't believe it. They do their final tour.
That final tour's been going on for 8 years.
But then they finished it, and then they're like, it's over. And then like a month later, like, oh, by the way, we're actually doing shows again.
Still going. It just never ends. It's just one final tour that goes on. That's it's going to be a 10-year final tour.
Yeah. Turns out we didn't make enough money.
But I mean, in reality. Well, I guess metal's different. I always say, like, you play until you can't play anymore. Metal is kind of hard. I mean, I guess that metal's not that crazy, but,
metal.
You look at guys like the Rolling Stones, or like Bob Dylan or like Willie Nelson, like, they should be playing until they should die on stage.
Yeah.
Like, just keep going. There's no need to stop.
Yeah. Like that last Metallica tour, you could see Lars was falling behind on the drums.
But metal's hard, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
that metal,
not only that, but think of how many years they've been doing that.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? That takes a toll, man.
I'm sure.
That takes a toll.
I mean, they got to be in their 60s by now. Like, it's hard to be doing that.
Yeah, they gotta be, right?
I mean, I think, not Ride the Lightning, Kill 'Em All was probably, I think, just hit, 30th anniversary or 40th anniversary?
Yeah.
In the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, 40th.
Yeah.
And it was definitely 80s. It had to be like mid-80s at least.
Yeah.
I have that album too somewhere in there. I try to collect, as I see them, I try to collect every Metallica album from the 80s and 90s. Like, I see one, I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing Kill 'Em All. I was like, yeah, I'm going to take that.
Yeah, I'm going to pick that up.
That's like it's kind of my favorite, honestly. My favorite used to be Injustice for All, which I guess is my second favorite now. Kill 'Em All is just so raw, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, like, I get it. People, like, when you listen to, like, Injustice for All or, what Master of Puppets, obviously, is, like, the big one everybody loves. And it's very well put together. And it's obviously a project that they were very successful with as far as making the sound perfect. But that raw first Kill 'Em All album is just... I love that sound specifically of just how everything was made. Like, and I say the same thing about the Nirvana album too. Like, I love the first Nirvana album. It just sounds so raw to me.
Yeah.
And that sound of them being so raw. And I love all their albums, of course. I mean, I don't think anything they've ever recorded was terrible. But that first album to me, which everybody says is their worst album. All right, say it's your worst album, but like whatever you want to do. It's such an amazing album still.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just such a different sound when it's like their first, like, when it sounds like it was recorded in a garage, like that's what I love. Like that very raw feeling to it. The overproduction it's great. Listen, you have the ability to use resources at that point, and they did, and this sounds great, and they did a great job writing great music. There's nothing you could take away from that. I just like the sound of like that original stuff. It's just something you can't replicate it.
No,
you can't go back and make like Metallica's never gonna make an album that sounds like Kill 'Em All.
No, yeah,
like you know what I mean.
Yeah,
you can't really do it. You can't really do it. I
Can't
mean,
fake
maybe
it.
you can, but it would be tough.
Yeah.
I mean,
you could record in something low quality, but like you can't, like I said, you can't remake it. It just is or it isn't.
I don't think it has to be low quality. I think
Maybe low
it's
fidelity is
just-
maybe a better word.
Yeah. Although that is, I don't know if you've been paying attention to like a lot of like in rock and roll, like people like the what is it called, slacker rock and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, like they're creating stuff that sounds like it's like staticky and stuff because they think it's. I think that's funny because I don't think you could do it on purpose. Like
No.
I'm sorry, but I think if you try to do it on purpose, it's not going to sound right. It doesn't sound the same. Like it's still. I don't know. I think it's like you're trying too hard and then it sounds like muffled.
Yeah.
It's like that's not the sound that we're looking for. The sound we're looking for is just
It's raw.
original
Yeah.
raw sound. Like when you try to do it in a studio, you're not going to get it the same, I guess.
It's hard to describe, but you know it when you hear it, what
Yeah.
that means.
But I thought it was funny that people like notice that people like that and try to recreate it. It's like, all right, you
Yeah.
could try.
Yeah. It's not, yeah. Because even if you ask those bands how would they record it, they're like, I don't know, we just set up and recorded it.
Well, they probably did it in a really cheap studio.
Yeah.
The thing is, there's probably a demo before anything, right? And that's recorded horribly. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
then, like, the record label, that's the other thing. What other people don't realize is, like, sure, Metallica's on a giant record label. I don't think when they put out Kill 'Em All, they were on a giant record label.
No.
Because you're nobody.
Yeah.
So a giant record label is not taking nobody. What happens is your first album is on like some small record label, which doesn't have the resources as the giant record labels like Interscope and Atlantic, all that type of stuff. So what happens is you wind up getting a more raw feel based on not as good production out of a worse studio. And the reason why Master of Puppets sounds so much clearer and better than Kill 'Em All is because at that point they got to that major record label, and now that they can have unlimited resources to be in an unbelievable studio and do whatever they want type of thing. So
Yeah.
I think that's the major difference that comes out of it.
Yeah. The gear they use too. It's like once you
gear,
start making
everything.
it big, yeah,
Oh,
you're getting
yeah.
$10,000 guitars.
Because that major record label's like, pick whatever guitar you want.
Yeah, yeah,
Pick
literally.
whatever,
You have 'em, yeah.
Our soundboard is worth of $50,000.
Yeah, it's a house. We get value.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's-
What do you get? He's gonna go back and go to Guitar Center. James Hetfield's gonna pick up Squire.
Well, now they get like everything's custom. Once you get to
Yeah.
that point, everything's
Yeah.
custom.
Yeah,
You get the one of a kind guitars that are
Yeah. literally
made
custom
specifically for you,
what I
the
like,
way
yeah.
you play and your height and
Yeah.
weight and everything.
made. Yeah. Meanwhile, Paul McCartney takes a right-handed bass and switches it to left and records Abbey Road with it. I think.
Oh yeah, is that
he
a
was a
true
lefty.
story?
Yeah,
Oh.
I don't know if it's Abbey Road, but like he recorded for a while on like a restrung bass. I think he's a lefty.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's another band. Like I people always hated on me because I loved classic rock, but I never liked the Beatles. I was like, they're just too pop for me.
Yeah.
Like I liked, the psychedelic rock of the classic rock era, and they were just like this poppy band
Yeah.
that didn't really appeal to me. And it's funny going back and listening to a lot of their stuff. Like they had stuff that was really different that I
Yeah.
really appreciate. I appreciate
an
them a
era
lot
of
more,
that, yeah.
obviously now. But their early stuff,
Yeah, was just
I can listen to
bubblegum
that
pop.
all day. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
A Hard Day's Night, come on, man. I mean, that to me is like my favorite Beatles era is their early stuff when they just have that because they did. I guess they were still poppy, but not as poppy because they weren't like radio poppy yet. Like they were just kind of like pop rock, but in a way where it still sounded pretty raw. So I that type of stuff was just when you listen to that in comparison to some of their other stuff, I don't know.
yeah,
It depends. There are some songs that I'm still just discovering because what people don't realize is how big their catalog is. Their catalog is so tremendous.
I think it's 17 albums or 15, something like that.
No, but when you forget about how many actual studio albums they have, they had so much other stuff released later on live version they have there's a series of albums that they did that was just stuff that wasn't on albums, and you're like, this stuff never got to an album.
Bands would kill to have this in the discography.
Oh yeah, like there's it's a double set. I have both sets actually. I'm not even gonna bother looking, but like that all their song or most of their songs on these albums were never released on studio, and a lot of those were like some of their best hits, and it's like, dude, how much stuff did they record that they made 2 double records of stuff that wasn't on albums? Like, you know what I mean? Their catalog is crazy. Who owns their catalog now? You know?
Pretty sure they sold it.
Yeah. Did they sell it to Michael Jackson? Right?
Originally, yeah.
Imagine having enough money where you could buy the Beatles. I own the Beatles music now.
Everything. I mean, the Beatles are it's a lot of money there they made. But then I think they bought it back, and I think they ended up selling the rest of it or parts of it. I mean, I'm sure with all the different families, it's probably got to be impossible.
Yeah.
Nail down all the estates.
But you wouldn't. I mean, I don't know how it works with the record label and stuff, but I mean, you would assume that, considering that Paul McCartney's still alive, right? So why wouldn't he just own it? Like, I don't understand how that works.
Yeah,
like,
it probably depends on who wrote the songs too. Even he wrote him and John Lennon wrote most of them. But George Harrison's got a couple songs in there. I don't think Ringo wrote anything really.
Yeah, I guess.
But then every band's different.
Is that how they go by? They go by who wrote the music?
I think it really depends. It depends on the band. Sometimes they'll just say it was the group.
Right.
And sometimes it'll be based on who gets writing credits, who gets composing credits. Because I know every band's different. I know famously Slipknot, it's not equal. I think Corey Taylor.
There's like 10 of them, first of all. But
I think it's like 3
of
them get the most money, and the rest of them are kind of paid out.
Yeah, it's Corey Taylor.
Paul Gray wrote most of the big hits, so I think he got it. Now it's family now.
No, who was the guitarist? Mick?
Yeah. There was 2 of them.
But he was a big writer for most of the music, too, I think.
So they split it. But some bands just go even split.
I can't remember his name.
It depends on their... Because there's fights, who knows?
Well, yeah. But yeah, I that was like something like I remember being younger and not realizing like that's how it worked. Like in my head, I'm like, no, they write everything together. It's like, yeah, that's not really how it works. It's just like 1 or 2 guys maybe write most of the music and the rest of them just play.
Yeah, just hired guys.
Yeah. Well, not just hired guys. I mean, if they keep the same band members forever, I mean, it is, you know.
But they just had to play the songs.
But yeah, they're basically just playing the songs. I mean, you gotta think like they have no input. Like, I mean, it's almost degrading, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like you're the drummer, and they're like, no, this is what you're gonna play.
Yeah.
Like, but I can't even write my part.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's got to be. But it's funny though, because Ringo Starr plays in his own band now. Yeah. I mean, he's still like making music, so he had to have some type of input on something somewhere along the way. I mean, they all feel like obviously John Lennon and Paul McCartney wrote most of the stuff, but you could always tell that by the solo works, right? Yeah. Who had the best solo work, right? Yeah. So obviously John Lennon, Paul McCartney had the best solo work. So obviously you're gonna say like they wrote the most amount of their stuff. I think George Harrison had 1 really good album, and then that was it, really, right? I forget the name of the album. He had 1 really good solo album, and I think that was it. And then Paul McCartney had Wings and all those, you know. It was Band on the Run, right?
Yeah.
Band on the Run.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's never the same without. It's got to be the group.
Oh, no, yeah. For them at least, right? I mean, yeah. Well, who was I talking to about this? Or maybe I was talking to you about this, where it was like, Under Oath has been around for so long, but changed so many band members that they don't have anybody from the original.
They're not that old.
Like, that's almost
20 years probably now.
25. I think they've been around since the early 2000s. You might
be right.
So they're close to 25 at least.
Yeah, true.
Their first album, I say at least 2003. Their first album.
Yeah, maybe even.
But I don't even think talking from them though. I think, I could be wrong, but I think from They're Only Chasing Safety, there's nobody from that album left.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah,
which is still wild because they're playing They're Only Chasing Safety.
They're playing an album.
Who wrote this music? Like, it's almost, how are they passing this off? It's almost crazy at this point. like the ever, because we were talking about this, right?
Yeah.
The ever evolving band, and the band could never die. You just keep replacing the artist with somebody else. Yeah, the band's- as long as you still get the artists who can play the old music, the band never dies.
Yeah, we're playing the music. Yeah, I think Leonard Skinner's doing it too. They're touring with
But
no
that's
original
different.
members.
That's no. Listen,
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
half
of
the
course.
band dies in an airplane,
Yeah.
Listen, but realistically, if you like changed people out based on like, okay, this guy's getting too old or whatever, I mean, you have a chance of keeping the band alive forever, right?
True. Yeah. I guess we need the drummer and like all my friends are gone. I'm like, I barely know these guys. I'm like, I'm leaving.
Yeah, well, it's almost like, you're at somewhere where people are just like, all right, I'm ready to retire. I'm done. I'm out.
I had
Replace
my fun.
me, but keep the band.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep
Send
it
us a royalty
going.
check.
Keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, how does that even work? These people are collecting checks off this.
So think
now?
about
I mean,
the margins now on top of having to pay out. I wonder what they're making.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, but I see. I don't know how it works with like who owns the rights to the name of the band.
Yeah, that's a good
Like,
question.
are you passing it off, or are they buying it off you? I don't even know how
Unless-
that works. Because realistically, you're inheriting a fan base.
Yeah,
How
literally.
easy is that? Yeah, go ahead, write a new album. Sucks it doesn't, but you've already inherited the fan base, and you're already playing their old songs. Like, how is that written up when it's passed off? Like,
Yeah. I'm curious, yeah. I mean,
imagine
obviously
the Beatles
there's
did
numbers,
that. Like,
yeah. Their sons all could do it.
true.
Imagine.
True.
Yeah.
A lot of bands could have did it.
Yeah.
You could have, you know. I mean, I guess not a lot of bands could have done it, but
Yeah.
I think it's easier with a band like Under Oath than it would be like a band like the Beatles. Like, you can't just replace vocalists and people like not going to notice. Like, there's a big difference.
Certain bands
With
just
metal,
have,
it's way easier to recreate the same sound in vocals, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, unless there's something super specific about the way you sound, I think you can kind of find somebody who sounds relatively similar. I mean, Killswitch Engage did it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if Black Sabbath can do it, Ronnie James Dio placing
yeah,
Ozzy.
but they weren't super successful. Or
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and I don't even think that had to do. I think it had to do with Ozzy not being there to write the music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is like the whole other thing. Like, you're swapping people out. Who's writing the music? You have to keep the music good, which Under Oath really hasn't done. But again, once you have a catalog as big as theirs of good music, does it even matter?
Yeah. It's like
As long as you agree to play the old stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, wasn't that like one of the things with August Burns Red? They swapped out the singer, but they refused to play stuff from that first album, right? So you'll never hear them play that.
Yeah.
I think that's the way it works, unless they started to play, but I'm pretty sure they don't play, you know, like you'll never hear him play Barbarian or something like that because it's off that first album and it was different vocalists, whatever.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe that's a legal thing. If he wrote the song, he's like, you can't play my song.
Yeah, I guess that could be a legal thing too.
I think that's why.
Well, no, that can't be a legal thing though for live music because you can cover. You don't
Yeah.
have to get
Who
permission to
knows, yeah.
cover. You can cover anything you want.
Yeah,
right?
true.
I think live music you could play whatever you want.
True.
Realistically,
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's when you record and sell the recording is
That could be part of it,
is where the legal part comes into play. I think. I don't think live music really matters.
True. Because you don't see Better Lovers or Many Eyes playing any Every Time I Die songs at all. Or even Dillinger songs. So.
Yeah, but in my opinion, I don't know if that's because that's a legal thing or that's a thing where it's like, listen, we're starting something new. We want to get our feet off the ground, starting something new.
Okay.
And I guess what you can kind of chalk it up to, like, if they did have a lot of success, well, it's like, yeah, people are coming to see your shows, but they're coming because you're playing Every Time I Die in Dillinger, and they don't care about your new music. That excuse comes off the table when you're not playing it. You're like, listen, look at the crowd I'm drawing, and we're only playing our new stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
True, true.
So, I mean, I guess it would be harder to gauge. Like, let's say they did throw in a couple Every Time I Die songs, a couple Dillinger Escape Plan songs. Well, then people will be like, "Oh yeah, people are only coming. You're only. How would you know? I'm selling out, but I'm selling out for what? For my music or for the because we're covering the old stuff. Like you don't know.
True.
Like you don't even know for your own personal gain. You don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now you're not playing any of it, and you're still you're like, oh well, we're doing good. Like they want our music. You know what I mean? Whether or not we're not playing anything from Every Time I Die or Dillinger, and we're still packing out the place, it's because we're doing something right, and what we're creating is good. And now, once you create that, and you've already put that together, I don't see why you can't throw in a cover every now and then. You've already established it, but
by now you could throw in one too.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but I'm sure there's reasons why they don't, or it could just be like, differences in what people want to play. The guys from Every Time I Die want to play the Every Time I Die songs, and he wants to play the Dylan, and then you're like, oh, what do we do? I don't want to play this. I don't play, or you don't feel comfortable too, right? I mean, or, because Keith and Jordan are brothers. Do you want him playing your brother's songs? And he was like, it could be a lot of things. It could be a lot of things.
You don't know what's going on.
Who knows what the conversations are like?
Yeah.
I do respect the fact that they made it on their own without covering their songs, though. Like I said, I think that's an accomplishment for them where they can say, hey, we did it without having to rely on people coming to see an Every Time I Die cover or a Dillinger Escape Plan cover. So I think that's really good. Okay. Because it's a good gauge, Sure, everyone will love it if they covered those. Yeah. But then the other thing, too, is like, well, what if you don't cover it good enough? Now it's like you're not... Yeah. It's you're not living up to the song how it used to be covered, so now it's kind of, all right, now you're making the song worse, you're making it sound worse, or, it doesn't live up, That's a big thing. That's a big reason why people don't like to cover stuff, is because it's almost like a responsibility. Yeah. If you don't do a good job, it's like, it's almost disrespectful, and it's not worth it to do it and flop. I mean, there's only so many songs that people have covered, and people can say, well, that's an amazing cover. People cover songs all the time. It flops. Like, you know what I mean? It's not good. And even the people who do those covers, they probably did it live so much that they know they did a good job with it, where they have enough feedback to say, well, that was an amazing cover, where they can record it live. And then that's a whole other thing. When you record a cover live and sell it, you definitely have to have some type of agreement with the, you can't be selling, that's the whole purpose of a cover, right? Like you can't steal music. Yeah, true. Whether or not it's a cover or not.
Yeah, if you didn't write it. But then Johnny Cash put out a whole album of covers. I've seen bands do that, so that should be something.
Yeah, but you know what's funny about that? I bet if you're any artist and Johnny Cash calls you up and he's like, I want to make a cover album, can I cover this song? Be like, dude,
absolutely.
Dude, go. Listen, I don't even want any money. Just do it.
It's an honor. Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't take everything. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do, bro. You're 90 and you're a legend. Like, I don't need, just do whatever you want to do.
Doing me a favor.
Yeah. You're going to get me more fans, so go ahead. Do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, one of the most famous covers is the Nine Inch Nails Hurt. How funny is that, man? It's funny that I want to know how that came to be, right? Like I can't picture Johnny Cash sitting there listening to a Nine Inch Nails album like, I'm going to cover this.
Yeah, I know which one I'm going to do. I'm going to do it, yeah.
I love this Nine Inch Nails album. I'm going to cover this. I'm like, there's no way.
Song about self-harm, I'm
running. Yeah, like how did he even hear the original song to think of covering it?
Someone had to bring it to him.
But even so, like, you got to think in his old age, he had to be kind of stubborn with music like that. Like, he could have been super open, like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll listen to this industrial metal album. Like, put it on. Yeah, right. Like, it's just the whole, like, I'm like, how did this come about? Like, I can't. The only thing I can think of is he heard somebody else cover it. Yeah, true. In that way, and didn't know the song, and was like, wow, that's a beautiful song. Yeah. And then, like, I eventually finding out the original, but still saying like, oh, I can cover this. I think this would be a great cover. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of, because I can't see him deciding on his own that he wanted to cover that song.
Yeah, no, I doubt it. He came to the studio.
Somebody put him up. I mean, unless somebody had the vision and was like, "Hey, listen,
I got an idea.
There's this song that would sound really good if you covered it."
Yeah.
Like, which kudos to that person, whoever that is, because that was a bullseye, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
literally.
how many times do you think a band hears, "Yeah, you should cover this song"? If I hear that like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Day.
Like, how do you get that song? Be like, all right, an acoustic guitar is all you need for this song. Yeah, just you and a guitar.
There's this industrial metal song, but I'm telling you,
acoustic.
Mike and acoustic guitar, and you are gonna kill it. Let me hear the original. You know what? It's better if you didn't hear the original. I'll just give you the lyrics. I don't know. How does that conversation transpire? There's no way. Like, maybe he met Trent Reznor. I don't know. I don't know what happened that came to be. But I remember when that came out, and I'm like, this is crazy to me that he's covering a Nine Inch Nails song, a friggin' Trent Reznor original, and this guy's just doing an unbelievable job.
Mm-hmm. Better. Almost some people say better.
Oh, some people. I'm sure some people say better. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. That's another thing that I don't like to do. I don't like to say that. Yeah, that cover was better than the original because it's like, well, the cover wouldn't exist without the original. Yeah. I get it, but it's tough for any. I mean, there's only so many. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple. I can't think of them right now, but I'm sure there's a couple covers. I'd be like, all right, it's better than the original. Okay, I'll give you one example, and nobody knows it's a cover. Damn, what the hell's the name of the song?
A couple songs of that.
Why? Well, give me one that you think.
Not that I'm thinking, probably not the one you're talking about, but you know that song "Blinded by the Light"?
Yeah, that's a cover.
It's a Bruce Springsteen song.
He wrote it originally. Right. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And they covered
that might be. Yeah.
There's a bunch like that. That used to be the thing to get famous. Is you would cover a song, people would listen to it, and then you put your album out once you get a little bit of a name. Like "Come On, Feel the Noise" was a cover of an older song. What else? There's a lot of songs like that you forget are covers.
Yeah. No, there was one that what the heck is the name of this song now? It's a Led Zeppelin song, but Led Zeppelin, nobody knows it's a cover. I didn't know it was a cover until I found
I know the riff for "Stairway to Heaven" was borrowed, I guess you could call it.
You're breaking the internet right now. Does anybody know this? Does anybody know that?
Yeah. It's a YouTube video of it. It's like,
oh, really?
They had toured with some band, and it was like some throwaway song they had. And I guess Jimmy Page heard it and was just like, hey, can I use that? And they're like, yeah, sure. And then he changed it a little bit and made it "Stairway to Heaven," the intro. The opening guitar intro. Then that's the only part of the song. The rest of that's, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Oh, it's Dazed and Confused.
Okay.
That's actually a cover. I don't know how or why, but I looked up the original artist, who was basically a nobody, never did anything. Yeah. So what I imagined happened was they saw this guy playing at a bar or something and was like, hey, I'm going to take that. Mm-hmm. And the funny part about it is that guy they probably bought it off the guy for like $100.
Yeah, probably. Like
yeah, but they didn't actually write that song, or at least the lyrics. I mean, probably. I mean, I would think. I think it was written as like, like a singer-songwriter folk song or something like that. Song. So, I think they obviously wrote all the music behind it, but I think the lyrics and everything where it's a cover. It was taken from another song. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if the original song was called "Dazed and Confused." I know it just came up as a cover by some guy, and I was like, "It's a cover?" I'm like, "What?"
His family probably sued and forced him to
I'm going to assume, I never heard the original, I'm going to assume the cover is better.
Fair. That's probably true.
Yeah, so there's a few probably. Well, people will see that's like the other thing, like "All Along the Watchtower." Right?
Yeah.
I guess
the
"All Along the Watchtower" cover with Jimi Hendrix is better than Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
"Sweet Child of Mine," another one.
Yeah. Well, is it? No, it's not "Sweet Child."
Or "Knocking On."
I was gonna say it's "Knocking on Heaven's Door."
Yeah, I can mix them up. Yeah.
Another one.
Yeah.
And then maybe those were the two. I think there was another one that Bob Dylan did that somebody covered that was really big. But yeah, I think actually a lot of the Jimi Hendrix songs were actually all covers. Oh, not all of them, but a lot of them are covers.
Yeah.
That he probably did a better cover of.
Yeah, he's a guitar player. He's not a songwriter, really.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously he wrote songs.
He wrote songs, and he wrote good songs, but most of the songs in his writing, I think, are more like blues influenced and are kind of have less lyrics and more guitar playing or whatever. You know, you find songs like, I'm not even sure that he wrote Purple Haze. Purple Haze, he might have wrote Purple Haze. I know there was a bunch of songs he did that were all covers, and people don't realize that they're covers because the originals just weren't that big.
Yeah.
Damn, man, what a decade to grow up in. Imagine being able to go see Jimi. We're going to see Jimi Hendrix live next week.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
And this is, I don't want to say he died in 69 or 70.
Wow. Yeah.
70, it was super early because he died like almost right after he did Woodstock.
Yeah. 27. Great.
Yeah, the Forever 27. Him,
Cobain.
Janis Joplin.
Who else?
Who was the fourth? There was 4 big ones. It was Cobain.
Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison, right? And then the 5th one was the original guitarist from Rolling Stones. I forget his name, Brian something. He passed away early on after the first couple albums. They only had like 3 or 4 of their early albums out before they got really big. I feel like there was somebody else too. Was Mac Miller in there? Might be.
Actually, I wouldn't be surprised. Or was
I think there was somebody else later on. Oh no, was it Amy Winehouse?
She might be 27.
Was she?
I think you might be right, or maybe she might have made it to 30, or maybe 27.
I don't know.
Was
there was somebody else who I feel like was added on.
Bon Scott maybe, or was he even younger?
Wait, who are you talking about?
Bon Scott from AC/DC.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't even know about that one.
I don't know if he's 20, but I know another one died young. Probably not though.
There's a list, but I know there was somebody added not too long ago, within like the last 10, 20 years, who they added to the 27 Club, who was pretty big. Died. I don't know how old Mac Miller was when he died. I
wouldn't be surprised if he was him.
Nah, he had to be in his 30s now.
He was pretty young when he came up.
Yeah, but he's been around for a lot longer than people think. Like I think his first album, Blue Slide Park, was his first album, or that had to come out like 2012. I mean, if he was 27 5 years ago, right? Like that, I don't think that adds up. I think he would have had to be way older.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
I think so. He was just around for a while. He's going to be one of those guys, man. People are looking back on his work, man. Like, he's going to get a lot of respect.
I think so.
Dude, Balloonerism is legit. That's a good album, man. He's got more talent than people realize, I think. I'm even looking back onto what was it, Circles or whatever? That whole album, I hated it when it came out. Now I'm looking back, and it's not really a hip-hop album. It's more of an R&B album. But he did a good job. He did a really good job. People write that stuff off. I wrote it off. It's a good album. Maybe some of his best work, but yeah, man, what a tragedy that was. Yeah. That's
I just feel like he was just getting started almost.
Yeah, legitimately, he could have been just getting started. His career could have gone way further than it did. Way further. Definitely wasn't at the end.
No.
That's for sure.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the recent vinyls I bought was that one. I remember I bought a couple, but I felt like I had to pick that one up.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna go down as one of the best hip hop albums this year. I'd imagine. I mean, it's really impressive, which is funny because it's like it's not even. It doesn't have anything to do with the production of it. Very written and recorded, but man, the stuff he must have had recorded. Just like it's the second album of just fire. It's crazy. It's
what
crazy.
Are we missing?
Yeah. What else is out there?
Yeah. That's what's a good thing about hip hop is so much. So it's so easy to just put out a verse, just record it.
Yeah, I got really big into, and it was funny because my friend used to to tell me to get into them all the time, and I never got as big into them until recently. Alchemist. I started getting into like all Alchemist albums as far as like all the albums he does. He does collaboration albums with all these hip hop artists, and it had been really cool to see him do one with Mac Miller. But yeah, like he has that style where like now I feel like Mac Miller would have been just great at being able to showcase his work with, because that's really what it is. It's a showcase. Alchemist is gonna be like, okay, we're gonna do an album together. I'm gonna do the most amazing beats you've ever heard, and you're just gonna give me the best verses you could ever do. And it's almost like what they do in that sense. Like there's different sections of hip hop, right? So there's like conscious hip hop, right, where you it's all about the meaning and the story, and it's fine, it's great, and I love it. And then there's hip hop there. It's the commercial hip hop. It's all about the poppy crap or whatever. It's garbage. But there's the hip hop that's hip hop for sport, as I like to call it, right? Okay. It's almost like a sport. It's like there's no consciousness to it. Doesn't matter what you say. Doesn't need a meaning. It's like you're playing a sport, so you're gonna put out the best verse. Doesn't have to be about anything, but just the sickest verse as far as rhyming and being able to put a verse together, right? It's you're playing almost competitively, like showcasing your stuff, like almost like freestyle, but you write it. It just doesn't have to mean anything, right? And Alchemist grabs you, said, "Okay, you're one of the best. You're a top contender. I'm gonna give you the best beats, and we're gonna put out this album. It's just whatever you want it to be, boom bap or gangster rap, whatever you want it to be, doesn't matter. I just want the best verses you've ever put out." And then they're able to put out these albums that really have no meaning or whatever, but it's just to listen to hip hop artists at their best, right? And it's crazy because you'll probably never hear Kendrick Lamar and Alchemist do an album, right? Because I mean that's what you would want. You would want to hear somebody like that, but it doesn't have the time or the money. He grabs guys who are really good, but at the beginning of their career. Yeah. You know what I mean? He grabs Baldy James, and he did all the stuff with West Side Gun and all the Griselda guys.
Yeah, and the Freddie Gibbs album.
And Freddie Gibbs. That was how I heard Freddie Gibbs.
Yeah, same.
I heard Freddie Gibbs do the Mad Lib albums, which is almost, I didn't hear him through. I knew about him before Alfredo. But Pinata was like, I didn't really understand Pinata when I heard it, as far as like, I was like, okay, this guy Freddie Gibbs is pretty good, whatever. And then Freddie Gibbs did a bunch of solo albums that were like, oh, these aren't that good. Maybe Freddie Gibbs isn't that good. And then I'm like, oh, I see what's going on here. This was Mad Lib doing a showcase. Now they do Alfredo with Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist doing a showcase. And then you see how good he really is when he's able to showcase his work behind an unbelievable beat, competitively, just on the fly. I mean, it's just so good. Like being able to hear these guys with just dope beats, just not a care in the world. I mean, like those albums are so good, man. Alchemist just did one which was funny. He did one with Rock Marciano, who's awesome lyricist, and you could tell he picks the best lyricist. He's like, I want the best lyricist in the game, and he did with Rock. But then it was funny because he did one with 2 Chainz, which everybody hated. It's like, why you pick one with 2 Chainz? But supposedly, which this is pretty crazy, supposedly he's doing one right now with Mos Def.
Okay.
Which is funny because Mos Def is like a conscious hip hop artist, so it's like, I don't know how he's gonna sound. And he doesn't go by Mos Def anymore. He changed his name.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yasin Bey.
His actual name now.
Is that his actual name?
That's his real name. Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't know if that was his real name or that's just what he's going.
You just dropped the character, I guess.
Okay, but I was like, wow, it's gonna be kind of weird. But I mean, Alchemist likes to do contempt, and it's funny too because you could say when he does albums with people, he changes his style to kind of fit the artist a little bit. Like the Rock Marciano albums. And I think he does because Rock Marciano, I didn't know this either, actually produces a lot of his own beats when he does his own hip-hop albums. So I think he tries to like kind of go towards Rock Marciano's style as far as creating beats. You can tell the beats sound a little bit different than when he does beats for West Side Gun and Benny the Butcher and Conway the Machine, and then when he does beats for Currency or Freddie Gibbs. They're just he kind of like changes the style a little bit. Arm & Hammer, he did the album with Arm & Hammer, which was amazing, and he changes the style of the beats a little bit. But it's just so cool to see like this showcase of art of hip hop at its finest in that form is just so cool, and nobody will ever hear it because it's not anything anyone pays attention to.
Yeah. Like you said, they don't put it on the radio. Yeah.
I don't put it on the radio, but it's just not something people look for. I think, especially because he tries to get artists, and it probably helps their career a lot. Like the guys like Navy Blue and Mike and stuff like that he kind of does work with. And it kind of helps their career a lot. And it's kind of like this thing where it shows how talented this guy is as a producer, where he can just, and when people don't know this either. And like, this is why I started to go down the rabbit hole of like how production works on hip hop albums, as far as like big hip hop artists creating an album. Like, I always thought in my head, for some reason, they just picked a producer and that guy did the beats. And that's not how it works at all.
Yeah.
Like, how it works is they pay producers to do like one song each.
Yeah.
So like the whole album is like every song is produced by a different artist, I guess, on a like pay by song basis, which I mean, sometimes I do more than one of the two or three, whatever, but they're not, it's almost never the same producer for the whole album. Yeah. I had no idea it was like that. So that was like a cool thing to I guess I don't know what it has to do with, as far as like then you have to give them half the writing credits or something, or how it works like that. But it's cool to see that like Alchemist was featured on all these albums, but you'll never know because the credits never come up unless you search for them.
Yeah.
Like they'll never give them the credit outright unless you look it up.
Yeah.
And then you'll see like, oh, he was on Atrocity Exhibition. Mm-hmm. He was on, every Kendrick album. Yeah. He did a song on every Kendrick album. Yeah. Actually, every Kendrick album starting with, he didn't do the first couple, but he did like the last three. He had a song on, I don't know if he had a song on GNX, I'm trying to think of it. But it's kind of crazy. And you're like, oh, he was featured on all these great hip hop albums, but you just didn't know because they just never really gave him the credit because it was probably a pay for song basis, which is kind of crazy. But, and he actually kind of doesn't do his normal thing when he does that. It's kind of weird. It doesn't sound like his normal stuff, I guess, kind of because you're working with the artist at that point. You're getting paid. It's not your project. You're getting paid to do a beat, and I guess you kind of like work with them, like what they kind of want and expect. But yeah, it's weird when you look at catalog people like Madlib's another one who's one of the greats, and he's featured on a lot of albums people wouldn't realize they're featured on and stuff like that. It's cool to look at stuff like that, though. Yeah.
Just with albums in general, like looking at vinyl, you could always look at the liner notes. That was a big thing back in the day, seeing like who wrote it. Yeah, it'll be like some random artist just did like backup vocals. Like we talk about Gaslight Anthem, I think Eddie Vedder did back vocals on one song.
Oh wow!
On their last album, it was like gang vocals, but I think he did vocals on one song. Or maybe it was the other way. I think maybe Brian did vocals on a Pearl Jam song, but
That's kind of a big difference.
Yeah.
I guess not. I mean, I guess realistically either one of them is featured on the other, which is pretty big.
And you wouldn't know unless you looked, and you'd be like, oh, vocals, Eddie Vedder. Like, oh.
Yeah, no, like I've never looked at those. I've never really, I was always just like a big go by the sound guy. Like, and I'm guilty of that. I should know more about the artists and the albums that people put it together, but I'm always just big into like listening to something and knowing the sound and liking the sound, and then later on I'll find out like, oh, this guy was on this album and was part of this, and like I didn't really know that, and you kind of feel dumb, but it's like, or whatever, I listen to it, right? Like no, yeah, but I feel like that's something I should get more involved with. I guess I do if I'm like really attached to the album. The problem with me is I have so much coming at me at a time, as far as like I'm listening to an album, love it. Oh, now there's another one. I love that, and I'm not like, I can't go into every single production liner of every album. No. It'll take
songs you love,
you know what I mean?
Or if you're curious,
Sometimes I do the deep dives into things, and I start like finding stuff out I didn't know, And then when we do this, sometimes I'll do like a little bit of deep dive into the albums and try to find stuff that I'll find out stuff I didn't really know about the albums. I didn't do that much on this one, only because I felt like I knew the album so well. And of course, I probably don't, because I don't know the names of any of the artists. That's why I always feel like I can't name the lead singer. It's like, listen, man, I bought his album. I don't know what else you want.
He doesn't care as long as you paid for it.
Listen, I guess I'm guilty of it. I should give him somewhat credit. You know what I mean? Like I should give them a little bit more credit as far as at least knowing some of their names or something about some of their background. But I don't know. When you create a piece of art, a work of art, I think the biggest thing is people enjoying that work of art. So listen, I enjoy the work of art. I I try to spread your art to other people and get everybody else to like it. You know,
that's all you can do.
I'm doing my part, and if I'm blessed with the time to do some research on the band or the album, then it is what it is. But yeah, man. All right, let's wrap this up. We've been doing this for a while.
We did it.
I think I've held you hostage here for long enough. But again, thank you for coming out.
Of course.
And this is everybody will get to see your beautiful face this time, unlike last time.
Yeah, that was another kink you figured out.
They never stop coming. I'm sure that you're gonna be
find out something like
trying to figure out this stuff forever. But hopefully it gets better and better, and hopefully things get easier and easier, and these get even more and more fun. But dude, I had a great time.
Same.
Thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. Until next time.
Pleasure.
Thank you for the picks, man. Awesome.
Of course. Great work. Watching. Oh shit, we never recorded.